Well. Good evening. Good evening. My teammate is back with me, Miss Swamp Rose Kiki. How are you?
I'm doing great tonight. How are you, AR?
I'm doing well. I am back home. I'm enjoying the home front compared to being on the road. As you know, we just made that trip up to Boise, Idaho, Ada County. And boy, that's exhausting. Let me tell you, that's exhausting.
How long of a trip was it for you folks?
You know, when we took it the first route heading up there, we did it right. We went halfway and then we drove the second half. So we split it into a 2-day drive, which was about 5.5 hours each day. On the way back, we thought we could just let Jen take the wheel and drive all the way back. And it was literally 13 hours. And we took a different route that went through the middle of nowhere, the most boring drive that you could imagine. No service. Yeah, we didn't have any radio. We didn't have any cell phone action. We didn't have anything for the majority of the trip. And let me tell you, I'll never do it again. I will never do it again.
Did you sing? What did you guys do for entertainment? I Spy.
I got told to sit and be quiet because I was annoying her. So she put me in timeout. But we made it. We made it safe. We got back, and now we're trying to get our footing right, get back to normal everyday life. Jen is back at work. I'm back to the exact same thing as normal, which is nothing. So I thought I'd come spend some time with you and talk the Idaho4 tonight. How do you feel about that?
Well, that's your job, so I'm glad you're here to do that right now. And I have to say, it's always the ride home that is longer. I mean, everybody knows that. So but 13 hours, you like doubled your time. And I'm surprised you didn't have some like eye candy on the way home. I heard it's, or I've seen the pictures. It's absolutely beautiful country, and you're very lucky you got to explore it. So
on the way up, we went the scenic route. On the way back, we went the 1-lane highway through the middle of the desert with nothing but farmland. And I'll never do it again. I will never do it again. And that's why, Jen and we're talking about the next trips we're going to be making once I get through these surgeries to the trials or the different things that we're going to do in the country. And we're going east. We will be on the East Coast covering cases. Of course, we'll be back on the West Coast by the time the Idaho4 and Brian Kohlberg hit the courtroom for trial. We'll be back in Boise. But I have this gut feeling we're going to drive up the California beach line instead of directly up through Nevada. So should be a different trip next time.
Well, there's a lot of interesting cases in the East Coast right now. So like not too far from where I live. And I've told you this before, if you wanted me to go cover that, is the Karen Reed trial. So that's right off Cape for me. And it's interesting. The locals are real, won't take an opinion on it. It's not as dividing of a case as you think in the community. Everybody's just kind of like bated breath, waiting to see how the trial is gonna happen. And the other one, of course, not too far, about 3.5 hours away, is going to be the Luigi Mangione trial coming up soon. And I know you've been really active integrating that case into starting to integrate that case into your channel.
Yeah, I've got about 6 videos that have been recorded that are sitting within my release booth of work that I've done on the Luigi Mangione case. So I hope to get those out relatively soon. I don't know when, but hopefully soon. We definitely want to attend that trial. We want to come up and not only say hello to you, Miss Kiki, in person, and your husband, and give you guys some high fives and pet your dogs, but we want to travel a little bit through New York and various places. As a lot of my family lived in New York for a long time, so I want to show my wife a little bit of the state and make the trek up to the Boston area and the Cape and those. So I just have this gut feeling, because Jen and I have been discussing it, that once we make that trip, we may not come back to Nevada. We may just actually move to the East Coast, where we've been kind of dedicating our thoughts to moving to, and we're going to see if she can transfer her position your work and hit that East Coast for a while. So
I don't blame you. I'm an East Coast girl, and I know, like, I don't know if anyone's from this area, but the Northeast, you know, we all we act like it's the center of the universe sometimes, because, you know, we got New York and all the other big metropolitan cities around here. But I'd love to see you, and hopefully, if you come up, ARL come stay with me and my husband on the Cape, and we can film a couple videos out here. Be fun.
yeah, I mean, it would be great to have people be able to see a team that actually works together, and you know, this is what it's all about. And the same thing with Unfiltered. Lucky, him and I have been in major discussions about getting together and doing a little bit of work, and he's got the same thought process in his mind. He gave himself a timetable there in his area to get his work done, get himself situated, and then he's going to begin traveling as well. So there's a good chance that we all get to meet up in one place and cover some cases together. It should be a lot of fun.
All right, Lucky can come with his wife or his girlfriend too. We'll get all of us together. Might as well invite the rest of the crew too. I'm just kidding, you guys. But wouldn't that be fun if we all got together in person and filmed some of these before the trial?
I have a gut feeling it's going to happen, and I forgot to mention one other person that could be involved in that is he's getting healthier and healthier by the day, as well as Pete with Metal Mayhem. And as you know, we all care about each other, and they send their best wishes to you as well, and they're, you know, looking forward to doing some work, all of us together, and it would be a lot of fun, lots and lots of fun.
My best to Pete and his wife too. I can't wait to work with you in the near future too, Pete.
I'm actually stepping up to the plate with him on Thursday, and let me tell you, that should be an interesting conversation, because I don't know if you've seen him back on the platform, but he's blowing up when it comes to his content and his great following. I mean, he flew right past me in subscribers the other day and never even looked back as he went by. He didn't even give me a wave. He didn't pay me $200 to go, nothing. He just went on by. But
his channel's doing great. Yeah.
I'm just so
streams are exciting. Lots of people. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off air.
No, that's it. I'm glad he's back, because he is a firm foundation to the very same team that we all are on, and that's no drama, respectful coverage of cases, enjoyment within the community. This is what it's all about. And, you know, Lucky and I did a members only live last night, which was his very first one ever on his channel. And I had the privilege to sneak over there and do a little bit of work with my wife with him, and it went really well. And I'm excited to see him continue moving forward, doing lives, you know, moving forward as well. So it's going to be really, really cool.
Yeah. No, I saw that you guys did a members only, and it's about time Lucky did some live streams on the platform for his subscribers, because it's always fun when he comes on this show, and he does great live streams. So thank you for getting that started with him. And, you know, I'll be joining his membership to check those out as well.
Yeah, it's always great to see him in action. He's a great guy that, you know, like yourself, when I find myself in a little mental bind needing somebody to talk to, you guys pick up the phone for me, and it's amazing. And J-Dub says I could always head out to Scranton, Pennsylvania. It's on the East Coast. I do know Pennsylvania pretty well. I've been in and out of Pittsburgh a little bit through my years. I do know Scranton. I do know a couple of different areas in Pennsylvania. And we always do like to stop by when the snow's not just pounding down. But that could be into play as well. You never know.
I do go to Scranton. I do like Pennsylvania, and I always think of Scrapple when I think of Scranton. That like breakfast food they have there. They have interesting breakfast foods in Pennsylvania. Scrapple. They have, what's the name of those, like French fries with like those cheese curds and gravy, poutine or something like that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I could never pronounce it correctly, and I would never even, you know, people would blow me up on the platform with my West Coast little talk of everything going on. So we'll avoid that. Now, I've noticed you and I have taken a little bit of break. We haven't been live together since I was up in Boise. We were able to bring the eve of the actual hearings, the motion limine hearings. How do you feel today now that you've had a few days separated from watching those hearings and hearing what people are saying about them? Within you, how are you feeling about what you saw and what you heard?
So, I mean, there's a lot to digest, and I could break down each part of that hearing. Obviously, there's explosive things, and all these subjects I've been covering and you've been covering in that motion for vague and undisclosed witnesses, where the Ann Taylor really laid out all the grievances she had. Now, if I had to pick one thing that just took me back in that hearing, it was the excited utterance from the judge suggesting that part or all of Cyre's affidavit was conspiracy theory. And to me, regardless of what he's referencing, whether it's the document in its entirety or if he's referencing one little thing to do with Ashley Jennings or the FBI's connection, it's irrelevant to me because I felt that was a mistake to me. And I don't have a legal background. I don't know. I don't want to second guess a judge, but to me, that makes something prejudicial, like the scope of Cyre's testimony. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to say that this is a conspiracy theory on the stand, don't you think that when Cyre gets on the stand, the prosecution's going to be like, well, the judge said he did conspiracy theories. I don't know. But that's that was my biggest, like the thing that I reflected on the most after the hearings so far. And how about you? What about you?
For one, I knew that would be in your very visual because of the fact you've had, back and forth with Cyre. You've done some work with him personally. So I knew that you were going to be keeping an eye on that and you were going to have your ears open and everything was going to kind of perk your interest within that. And let me tell you, as Jen and I made our way up to the area, I did relay to her. I said, there's some very interesting parts of this hearing that I'm just going to be solidly interested in listening to. And one of those, of course, was Cyre in regards to that affidavit, because we knew that was going to be a very important discussion, not only for that day, but moving forward in this hearing. This is literally a defense expert witness that would be taking the stand. And I wanted to see how the judge was going to allow either him to speak or the defense to introduce his affidavit. And I'll tell you what, the feel within that courtroom when that topic was raised compared to what I've caught, in the rewinds of the different videos that are out there. And let me tell you, I learned my lesson, Swamp. I'll never sit the direct line of the camera in a courtroom again. I mean, oh my goodness, it's like everywhere I go to watch that, I have to see my wife and I, and we're not ever doing that again.
I love it. I love that I had that, I call it my boots on the ground, even though I know you guys aren't really mine, but I felt like I had my 3 boots on the ground there. And,
I'll tell you what, if anybody ever says I was lying about being in that courtroom, boy, I've got 6 to 8 hours worth of footage that just disproves that. And I have to apologize to everybody that had to watch 8 hours of me literally squirming in a wood booth in that courtroom. But I knew that was going to be a big deal when they started discussing Cyre. I knew he wasn't in the building itself. So I knew that it was never going to be a fair discussion because at no point could he come on to make his actual, discussion valuable through his own voice and his own testimony. So it allowed that open door for Judge Hippler to just shut that down, which I thought was done in the most inappropriate way I've ever seen anything in a courtroom happen. You don't attack an expert witness in a manner like that because, like you said, just discredits them in everybody's eyes now moving forward, which it has, unfortunately, for a lot of people that are being very in touch with this case that are on the opposite side of innocent until proven guilty. They now are screaming how this discredits him. And, I disagree. I don't think it does. I think that there's going to be something that comes back out of this. I don't think it's over. I don't think this discussion is at all over. So I'm excited to see. But I'll tell you what, when this topic came up in the courtroom, I looked right at my wife and I told her right now is the moment that this entire day is all about. This is the excitement of the entire day is right here. And boy, it sure turned out to be that.
Wow, that's interesting that you had that same feeling, because the second I heard that, I thought too, this is the one part that's going to come away from the trial. But honestly, it's just one of the more the parts that stand out to us. A lot of the details are really interesting, and even just breaking down what they were saying in that interaction about balance. But of course, like the most important part is what he said about side. But there's a couple things. Like one of the points that Angel D brought up in one of our live streams last time we were talking about this is the judge actually, it could have been the fact that if he did have Cy come up there and test, and this doesn't negate the fact that he called him a conspiracy theorist, but if he were to have Cy come onto the stand, well, then he'd probably also have to have rebut Nick Balance come on the stand, and it would then become a 2-day hearing. And maybe he just decided, because he isn't doing the Franks hearing and they're not going back to officer misconduct and maybe this is all going to be done in cross-examination. Well, obviously it is now going to be done all in cross-examination, but it could have been to prevent also having Nick Balance coming on. Again, that doesn't negate the fact that he possibly, in my eyes, could have made the scope of Cy testimony slightly prejudicial. However, I think any reasonable person can listen to the resume of Cy and how he has worked so diligently for law enforcement to put away bad guys for so many years and train our highest level of law enforcement in this country. Thousands and thousands of cases are affected by the work that he's done and the software that he's written. Hundreds of cases he was one of the lead expert witnesses in. And he does all his work pro bono. And here he is, first time testifying for a defense. And oh, how the tables have turned on him. And it's just like breathtaking. And what's going to happen if they do discredit Cy? If his testimony is prejudicial, are people going to go back and try and use that prejudice and the hundreds convictions that he played a key part in? So anyway, that's what I know I'm ranting a little, but
that's the major question about this is, and I don't believe Cy and I understand what was said in the affidavit. I understand exactly what he said. I know what he pointed the finger at. And I know what his point was. But at the end of the day, what Judge Hippler needed to do was swallow a little bit of pride, bury a little bit of emotion, and say, okay, look, I was expecting Cy to include with his affidavit some evidentiary value, maybe some points that he could put evidence to what he's saying within the affidavit, and then I would have given it more credence to open up the courtroom and have this discussion. And Swamp, you're saying, well, it could have opened the door to where this would have gone on for 2 days. They had 2 days set aside for it. 2 days were already set aside for this. And he just narrowed it to where that second day was obsolete and wasn't necessary because he didn't allow somebody to come in and explain not only what he had said, but he could have helped the judge better understand the points he was trying to make. And that would not so much have brought all the heat onto Ashley Jennings' shoulders. We need to bring the heat onto where it actually belongs, and that's balance in the FBI. If you don't want to come in here and speak truth, if you don't want to come in here and show your steps and your work, then damn well don't show up for the trial, because your word is no good if you can't back it up with something. It's just like, and I'll utilize this as a little example because it's something I'm going to. If people only want to tell half truths, they don't want to state the entire truth because they don't know or fully understand what that may be. So they introduce the idea of a half truth, which could potentially hurt somebody very badly, meaning the FBI doesn't want to show its work. It only wants to give the tip. It only wants to give you that little bit that could prove somebody guilty, but they don't want to explain as to why they're guilty. Then why would they be so upset if somebody raises the question and says, hey, you know what? This isn't normally how you do your work. This isn't normally how you do this. And I see problems, and I think we need to have this brought to the attention of the court. The problem is Judge Hippler wasn't willing to listen to that, shut it down, which just means that Cy Ray's voice has been put on mute. And I don't think that's fair to not only himself, but that's not fair to Brian Kohlberg and the defense team either, because they had a point that they wanted to make, and they weren't allowed to make it. That's not right. That's not fair, because that could shut it completely out, Kiki, from the entire trial. So that point may never be made now. That's sickening. That's sickening to even think about.
It's sickening to even think about. And it's also very, very, very sickening to think about that somebody of Cy Ray's experience and caliber is willing to go ahead and put his reputation and career on the line and call out a high-powered prosecutor for the state, to the point where the judge says these accusations that you're making could get somebody disbarred. And that's the point. Like, he didn't say that in a vacuum. He didn't say that like last minute. He like wrote that affidavit after 2 years, and that's what he had to say. And he said what he said. And I don't understand like how, yes, he's making serious accusations. That's the point. There was no Frank's hearing. There was no Frank's hearing. Like, let's do it now. Let's talk about it now. I just feel like the judge, by saying these are accusations that could get somebody disbarred, is like the old saying, not seeing the trees through the forest. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's the point. Like, right.
Well, and it's truly frustrating because, I guess I've been keeping mental notes like you do, as we follow the track record of what's happening since this case has been moved into Hippler's courtroom. And, this is a conversation I was literally having with Lucky the other night. It's like, what would be the difference right now if we were still in Judge's courtroom compared to Hippler's courtroom? Because Judge, the one thing I liked about Judge is if he didn't fully know what to do, he sided in opening up and allowing it to be seen or heard, meaning the IGG information that was completely sealed and being hidden, Judge actually opened up for the defense to be able to see it with their experts. I don't think Hippler would have done that. Judge opened up the transcripts of the grand jury indictment for Brian Kohlberg and his defense team to look into. Judge Hippler would not have done that. These are the differences that you get when it comes to judges, and this is a big difference. And I'll tell you what, Swamp, as I sat in the courtroom, and I know we've only been able to speak a couple of times since I was able to walk out of that courtroom. A lot of people don't understand. When it became break time, the third break, so we had lunch and then we went to the third break. And after that third break was going to be the majority of the conversation after the Cy Ray debacle. I told my wife I wasn't going back into the courthouse. I was leaving. Like, I was done. That was it for me. I couldn't take anymore. I didn't want to be there. And she literally talked me into getting back on the elevator, coming back up to the 5th floor and going back into the court. I did not want to. I had no interest in being in there. And let me tell you, you could tell how nervous I was in that courtroom because my stomach was growling so loud. People literally thought it was the service dog on the floor, snoring on the floor below. I couldn't get my stomach to stop. It was 2.5 hours of my stomach at the highest noise level you could imagine. I don't know how the judge didn't throw me out for literally interrupting the court because my stomach was so nervous. But I was able to get out of there and calm myself down. But uh, I can fully understand how the defense and how Brian Kohlberg was feeling listening to that judge's tone and his volume level triple and quadruple in volume, just discussing the Syray. I mean, just in that Syray conversation, he literally went from almost a whisper that you could hardly hear to I felt like I was being yelled at by my wife for not doing the dishes or something. Like it was full blown yelling.
There's so much. Okay, so I kind of like lump vocal tone in with body language when I do like, and if we're just going to segue into a little analysis of the judge, there are so many observations already in the chat just regarding his vocal tone and body behavior, but it is so noticeable and more. I don't know if it's a tell or if it's just his general habit, but something happens when he is just addressing like legal concerns or when he's recalling something versus when, I mean, all of us kind of raise our voice when we get passionate about something, but it's so distinctive. And the fact that the audio can't even pick up his voice. And sometimes his hand is blocking the microphone. Other times he's touching his face. And I mean, I'm not one to talk. I know I play with my hair all the time and whatnot, but like this was different. It was like, oh, or like, oh, and the eye rolling, there's just so much to be said that the not sitting up straight, hunching over in your chair, slouching. I mean, I understand it was a long trial, but like you said, it could have gone on for 3 days and it was, pretty short.
It was kind of funny because earlier in the morning, I don't know, it was probably around 10 a.m.-ish part of the hearing. My wife kind of nudged me. She said, "Are you falling asleep? What's going on?" Because the conversation at that point was just kind of a dull moment for me. It was talking about certain words they wouldn't be used in a trial. And, to me, that just wasn't the most engaging conversation that I needed to listen to. And, the wife nudges me and says, "Are you okay? Are you awake?" I said, "Yeah, I'm awake. I'm just resting my eyes." And she goes, "Yeah, so's the judge. I'm just not sure if he's awake." And I said, "Well, yeah, that's the problem with this guy is from time to time, it just doesn't seem as though he's awake either."
It's so incredible to hear, even from Jen, who doesn't I know Jen watches the case regularly, but just to hear, it's just interesting to hear Jen's observations on that too. And I did watch the live stream when you came back with Lucky that night. And it was interesting listening to Jen's perspective and listening to the way that she talked about just, I'm trying to remember, it was something about Brian Kohlberger's side, but just like her observations were just really interesting. And another observation that I thought was something I wanted to pass on to my audience that you said, oh, and I also wanted to correct something I said a moment ago. I said the judge didn't grant a Frank's hearing. He did. Wakanyan Tonka did correct me. There was a partial Frank's hearing granted January 24th. So I'm sorry I misspoke. One thing that you said that I remember when just in general observation about body language, you said is you were talking about mass off and you basically, "Hey Jen, how's it going?"
I just want to let everybody know she was checking in from work and saying hello. And just a brief moment, I don't want to cut you off because I know what you have to say is important, but Jen's voice will be heard more often as she will be joining us in conversations more often when she gets a chance. I believe a lot of people really helped her confidence and made her feel a part of the team. And Unfiltered Lucky, and I know Swamp, you guys have really pushed for her to break that mold a little bit and add her voice to the mix because she does have a little different viewpoint, a little different. And I think she's gaining a lot of speed and really gaining confidence. So I'm excited about that. Even I myself now am sitting back and saying, "Damn, look at my wife go. Look at how she's speaking about this." And she makes a lot of sense. And brings a totally different perspective than I do too. So
I think with your channel being a convict's thoughts, having Jen's voice alongside yours is the perfect complement, because in generally speaking, like the people who watch AR's channel aren't limited to convicts. Like incarceration that reaches the lives of so many people in this country. There are family members. I always think of this story. One of the last times I was talking to AR on the phone a couple months back, we had this long conversation about some work that he does out in Vegas. And I remember him telling me about a mom whose son went into prison and she hadn't talked to him in like 3 months. And all she wanted, all she wanted was a phone call with this guy. And you were able to accommodate that really quickly. And it was a really touching story. But my point is this, is that like, your channel, it complements your channel well, because it's not just a convict's thoughts isn't just for a convict. It's for the people who are, for one, it's incredible insight into true crime. But for two, you know, the people who support the people who have been in incarceration and whatnot. And Jen is that voice for those people.
And I appreciate you saying that, because I think that's one of the most important things, that when people look at the channel, and I get it, when it says a convict's thoughts in there, it immediately drives people to think that I'm trying to play like I'm some tough, you know, criminal guy out of the penitentiary. And that's not what it's about. We're living the life after incarceration of trying to better our lives, trying to move forward. But we've never forgotten about what we've gone through, what we endured, what we experienced. And if we can lend just a helping hand to anybody out there that's not only dealing with that, but anything within, you know, the recovery or just the self-betterment part of their life. I think, Kiki, you've got to kind of know me a little bit. I'm one that really strives to not only push myself to a better place, because I know I'm not perfect. I know I have a lot of growth to do, but I try to encourage others to do the very same. And I'll work directly with them. We can make pacts. We can make deals. We can, you know, if you improve one thing today about you, I'll focus and improve something about me, and we can do it together. And that's one good thing about Jen's voice, is she's been right in the thick of the heartbreak, the drama of what it's like to live with somebody that has the criminal side, you know, happening in their life, whether it be court hearings, trials, the nervousness, the pain, the crying. But she also knows the experience of seeing it all change when somebody comes home and really is dedicated to bettering themselves. So it is important that her voice is heard as well.
Well, turning the conversation towards the actual hearing and taking a little bit of advantage of that perspective, what were some of Jen's observations as Brian, as a defendant on the stand? And I know in conjunction with that, I just was wondering, and I know the last time you saw him wasn't in person, but compared to the last hearing, body language, posture, you know, skin tone, weight, what are your thoughts on Brian's appearance from the hearing?
I think Jen and I, as an overall, were in agreement, because we did talk about it. We whispered about it when we first saw him in the courtroom, but we also have spoken about it a little bit outside of that. He looked healthy. And one thing that I expressed to her that she seemed to agree with is he looked relaxed and comfortable. As the hearing was beginning, I was expecting to see nerves and, you know, kind of what I knew what it was like for myself in that position where your stomach's unsettled, you can't really stop fidgeting. He seemed comfortable, he seemed relaxed, and I'll tell you what, Jen and I both were in absolute agreement. He has a bond with Massa. He is completely at ease with her. He's comfortable with her. You could tell he trusts her. They communicate very well together. I think she brings him confidence, and I think that she brings the comfortability to him when he may feel unsettled. I believe he turns right to Eliza and he has a little conversation. He's back right on pace.
You know, it's actually funny you say that because that was actually what I was starting to talk about a minute ago when you were like, when we went into something else, is you made a really interesting observation about Massoff. And I wanted to share it with my audience, which is AR was talking about, aside from the fact that he was witnessing this really nice bond that the two had formed, she also, she was having a really, I don't know, how do we explain it? You basically said there was almost like heat coming off of her. She was fired up. She was ready to go, but she was on her game at the hearing, is what AR was saying from
100%. And it all, you saw it light, the spark within her lit the minute they started talking about his family and being able to be in that courtroom for the trial, and how she was explaining that his family supported him in every single way. They were at every single hearing via Zoom or online, being able to watch. And I'll tell you what, you could feel it coming from her. But then when she walked back to the defense table and she went to take her place next to Brian Kohlberg, you could tell he looked at her with an appreciation look that you would never even have seen anywhere else. 1 minute, Swamp, I don't mean to cut you off. I got to grab something from my dog. So if you want to say hi to the crowd, let me go get this real quick before I lose it.
I would love to. Hold on, let me
All right.
find the camera. Give me 1 second.
Yeah. You take over for me. I'll be right back.
All right. Well, let me first start by turning to the chat and saying thank you for everybody being here tonight. We have a live chat, and I've been watching your comments as they go. Just wanted to bring up a couple quick things. I saw that when we were talking about Massoff, Angel D brought up her voice was cracking talking about Brian's family, and it was interesting. And if you remember during that scene, it was what a juxta whatever position, because we see Bill Thompson, just that untimely, it wasn't Bill Thompson, it was actually Jennings, making the Ashley Jennings, who kind of cracked a smile or a joke at sort of an inappropriate time when they were talking about the families. And it's just interesting to compare and contrast their professional mannerisms. And then I saw another one up here. Oh, Valerie was bringing up the hand signals, right? So did you all see that there was a woman sitting right behind Brian Kohlberger, and she ended up giving like a heart, and it made a lot of headlines. Anyway, I guess, you know, she was reprimanded in court for that, and I don't know. So I just didn't know if you guys saw that. That was, I thought, a pretty interesting thing. I actually saw a comment from her on AR's channel afterwards that she had left. Just, I don't know, just talking about different things. I don't know what you caught, if you caught everything during the hearing. It was so long. Let me go down there. And that lady, oh, are we talking about Jennings? You missed that? Yeah, I have it posted in my Discord. But like you can see like Brian Kohlberger right there, and like right in back of him, you can see her putting up like a heart symbol. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, it was obviously, you know, not something you should be doing in court. I don't know who the woman was. And another thing, I don't know, I've heard this question a lot, just thinking of things I can share with you about the court. A lot of people were wondering why there weren't so many people in the courtroom. But what was interesting is AR was actually listing out a bunch of different people. There were actually students there from a law school nearby, but the angle of the camera cut both sides of the courtroom off. So you couldn't see any of the victims' families, and you couldn't see really everybody on the defense side. Just my boots on the ground. Just kidding. Backwoods beats and outlaw rhythms, says Jennings in her side eye. Meanwhile, the defense out there looking like they just walked off a professional runway, not a courtroom. I don't even know why they had to put in these orders for people to dress better in court. Like, I just don't know who's entering that courtroom without showing respect to the judge. I don't know. Kind of dumb. AR, your turn.
I just find back. I mean, if you had just seen that chase around the house to try to get something back from Xander, you would have been dying laughing, because the moment I was able to get it from Xander, Bayou was able to pick it back up off the floor and take off the other direction with it. So I hunted one down, but I couldn't get the other, so I just gave up. But what were we talking? I put up a question here. I'm trying to understand.
I want to talk, the audience didn't hear about, I don't know. I was just trying to recap on things from the courtroom that I had heard from you, and because I was texting AR back and forth during this thing. And I was talking about the woman that was reprimanded because she put like a heart symbol and back. It was inappropriate, obviously, but she put a heart symbol. Do you know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
She left a comment on your channel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway,
very nice woman.
Yeah.
We only spoke for a brief moment within the courtroom. She was absolutely respectful and lovely towards my wife. She did tell me that she was a fan of my channel. So it was one of the very first times I personally had been able to speak or engage with her. So I didn't know her well. I did not know what happened in the courtroom until after the fact, after it happened. I didn't see it happen. I didn't know it happened. I did see the comment on my channel, and I'm one of those types of people. I'm not going to remove many things from my channel unless it's blatantly disrespectful or hurtful towards somebody. So I did see what she wrote. And I don't know what happened. I didn't see it. I don't know the absolute truth. I haven't had the opportunity to speak with her since. But I do feel as though Swamp, and the one thing that I'll say about it is I feel like it's being blown out of proportion.
Yes.
And that's probably not the word proportion, but it's being blown out of context altogether, because she was not disruptive to the courtroom. She was by no means disrespectful to anybody within that courtroom. And, after the fact, I did venture to her channel. I did see that she had covered some of the Daybell case, and she had been in that courtroom before. So I think she's local, and I think she has the right to be there. And it's, I think it's unfair the what people are making out of it that possibly doesn't deserve that.
You brought up two words that I thought of too, is like, well, first off, you didn't see it during the courtroom and it wasn't a disruption, but the two things I was thinking of is it did sound like from her comment that she kind of got attacked unfairly after the courtroom. Like, it wasn't like an officer of the court attacking her. It was people within the courtroom questioning her. And I don't know. I think that it goes back to it's innocent until proven guilty. And courtrooms are open to the public so that you don't have to take a side, but you can stand behind someone in solidarity and support. And I mean, that's the point of it being open to the public. Part of this hearing was regarding, obviously, I just talked about Ashley Jennings and Bill Thompson having that side conversation during the discussion of Brian Kohlberger's parents coming in. The reason why Brian Kohlberger's parents, why it's of importance, is because it favors him to have people standing behind him on his side. Now, I'm not saying that, we should be able to throw up hand signs or anything like that. I get the point. But my point is this, is that, it was just a person on the side of support. And the question I guess I'm asking is, judging by the comments you left on your channel, was she maybe a little bit treated unfairly or attacked over it? I don't know. up for
I do feel so, and unfortunately, I've taken some heat from people that think I'm directly involved in something that led to that. I've had many people that felt as though I disrespected the court. They felt as though I potentially should have been removed from the court. And let me tell you, I believe, and Twizzlestick was in the court, and he did a great job of conducting himself in a very good manner. The beautiful lady that Twizzlestick was accompanied by, Sue, she was very professional in the way that she handled herself. I had two other people next to me that I had got to know while we were there that conducted themselves perfectly well. Jen and I absolutely respect the court. We respect the process. And I do understand that the cell phone rang for a brief second, but mistakes happen. They happen. And the guards within the courthouse were very respectful to everybody, including my wife and I, even though we had a little mistake. No big deal. And let me tell you, that's one thing I do have to say, and I know it's going to be different by the time we get to the trial, but for this hearing, I 100% have to give the Ada County Courthouse employees and officers of the court and the guards that work the courtroom true respect for the way that they handled it. They were amazing. They were engaging. They were polite. They were good, nice people. They shook my hand. They made me feel comfortable. They made us feel welcome within their courtroom. It was amazing the way that they handled that courtroom, and I hope they'll do the same thing during trial. But I do want to give everybody a heads up because I know there's a lot of people that are going to attend this trial. I know there's a lot. Just respect the courtroom the way you want to be respected, and it will absolutely be done that way. You will be respected while you're there, but they're not going to put up with much. They're not going to put up with much. They're not going to be putting up with the hand signals. They're not going to be putting up with cell phones that are raised to a position that makes it look like you're taking a picture. Don't disrespect anybody in the courtroom because there are different sides in this courtroom. I know it's hard to see that on the cameras. There are victims' families just feet away from you. There are prosecution side lawyers just feet away from you. And, they're going through a rough time, just the same as the people like myself and my wife and being in that courtroom. It's not the most comfortable of settings to be in, but we could all work our way through it. And I think that for all those that come out for trial, it's going to be interesting to see because you're not all going to fit in. You're not all going to get in the courtroom. You're not even all going to get near the building. I'll tell you that right now. For all the people that think they're coming out to this trial and they're getting anywhere near this building, you're not. It's going to be locked down like crazy. But for those that get in, it should be very interesting.
On the same point as that, though, it was interesting how you kind of thought there might be more difficulty getting in or like accommodating space with this hearing, and there wasn't. So I don't know. Though again, the trial is a different story.
Well, I did learn a little bit about that since then. I did have a conversation. I believe it was yesterday. Yesterday was Monday. Yesterday I had a brief conversation with someone from the courthouse that was very excited about the way everything went, but they did tell us that some people were not able to get into the main courtroom. They were in an overflow part of the courtroom. I don't know who those people were, but it does seem like that courtroom could have potentially been more packed while we were there than it actually was. So.
Well, yeah, I don't know. So I thought it was an interesting discussion regarding, I hope I didn't come across, like I hear people saying, well, what would what would you say if the victim's families put up a heart symbol? And I understand, like, I don't think it's, you know, I don't know. I think it's a sensitive conversation. I definitely don't want to offend that other creator too. We just thought it was interesting and wanted to talk about it. It seemed eventful. But if we want to talk about back to like the content of the hearing, I did have one final point. We talk about the number 7 a lot, and people keep referencing 7 days and a retention period of records and all these other things. But I think the number 7, if we're going to just stick to numerology here, is very interesting in Cyray's opinion under vague and expert witnesses when they talk about Nick Balance and his analyzing of 7 minutes of time in that timeline. And what Ann Taylor is saying is these 7 minutes are incredibly important and actually exculpatory, because the way that these 7 minutes are placed would throw off the rest of the state's timeline. And I mean, that's aside from the fact that, you know, Cyray says Brian Kohlberg wasn't there. So aside from the scope of his testimony, we got like a little tiny snip of kind of what Cyray might be saying, because we really don't know what he's alluding to. Like, we know a little bit from the May 30th hearing in 2023 or in 2024, but I thought that was interesting, because that was kind of like just a peek behind the curtains of what we're talking about. And it kind of reminds me of like Calusa Drive and the whole controversy of how did you make a 3-minute drive in something that should take about 6+ minutes to do. So anyway, I'll toss it back to you with that.
Well, and that's the exact reason why it's so important to allow Cyray to come in and make his points and share exactly what the points he's trying to make are. If normal, common, everyday people are confused by the conversation that Cyray is presenting in what he's trying to show all of us, I believe that there's a good chance the judge is also missing the point as well. Amen. Allow Cyray the opportunity to speak and share his points. And then at the end of that, after you've questioned him and got the answers that you feel as though were most important to fully understand what he was trying to say and the points he was trying to make, then you can say that you don't agree with his assessment, and you can excuse him and let him go on his own way. But there's still no reason to discredit him as something that comes back as conspiracy theory, because now we got to go back to Arizona. We got to look at every case that this gentleman's been involved in on the prosecution side of things. And we potentially have to open up the door that if it's a conspiracy theory in the Brian Kohlberg case, is it a conspiracy theory in every case he's worked? Now we have a problem. And this judge should have never, ever opened that door. It's ridiculous. It's just like calling a man or a woman that you've never met in your life, and you're looking at them for the first time eye to eye, and they say something that just doesn't quite make sense to you, and you call them a fool without giving them the opportunity to actually explain what they meant to you so that you better understand it. At the end of the day, Judge Hippler, in this sense, would be the fool, not Cyray.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've tried, like, so I did, it was really kind of Jules of all trades. And thank you to Trisha from Echoes of Clarity for reaching out to Jules. She lent me some of her footage that I could use in a live stream the other night for, from the hearing. And I really tried to listen very carefully to see if the judge was specifically calling one thing conspiracy theory or another. Like, is he referencing what side does as conspiracy theory, or was he referencing something else in the affidavit? Because the affidavit, for everything it certainly wasn't anything about Brian Kohlberger's defense. It brought up problems, but it wasn't giving us a snapshot of what Cy is going to say on that stand. And I will give the judge a little leeway that possibly he was not referencing anything to do with Cy other than the disbarring and claims regarding Ashley Jennings. And again, I don't think that that's okay for him to dismiss, because there's this man putting his career and his reputation on the line to call some person out, to call her career out. He's willing to do that. Like, it's not the place to discredit it there. I mean, if somebody is willing to do that, I don't see why he deserves to be discredited there. I don't think the judge was trying to discredit the scope of his work. The problem is that you can't put, the saying goes, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. You called it a conspiracy theory. You made that excited utterance. And now when the jury comes on the stand, for those in Boise who are watching this hearing, unfortunately, they know that. And doesn't that open up the room for the prosecution to be like, well, even Judge Hippler said this guy does conspiracy theories on the record in a hearing.
Well, and this part of the hearing would have woken up anybody in that courtroom that had fallen asleep, where this was the bang of this hearing, and the voice of everybody. And I had told Jen prior to this, when Massoff was trying to get through to Hippler on a couple of things, and you could tell they just were not on the same page whatsoever. They were missing each other's page altogether. So Massoff, and I told Jen, she's on fire right now. Like, she is a ticking professional time bomb, meaning she's not going to explode, but at some point in time, she's going to make a very direct comment to this judge that's going to ring his bell in a professional way. And Jen shook her head. She agreed. And then to watch the way that Ann Taylor was able to collect herself during the Cy Ray explosion by the judge, and she was able to collect herself by taking some deep breaths, pausing within the conversation, and then coming back at the same tone. It really showed a lot, because she stayed very even keel, very confident, very collected, very professional, and Judge Hippler looked like a fool. Like, if you were able to separate what you see on the TV compared to what you're visually seeing in person and your ears are hearing, and the movements of everybody around that judge, from the clerks to the guards to everybody in that courtroom, you could tell Hippler just made a fool of himself. And it was like, wow, okay, look at the hush on the crowd right now. And it wasn't a hush because everybody thought, oh no, Cy Ray just got taken apart. He'll no longer be a part of this case. No, it was, did that really just come from the judge? Did he really just go there? Did he just do that? And yeah, he did. And it was even worse in person than it was in the courtroom. And I'm excited. I'm just excited to see what comes from the defense, because I don't think it's solely going to be from Cy Ray. I know there's going to be a response. I know there is. But I'm looking forward to seeing Ann Taylor and Massoff, their response tied in with the Cy Ray response, because I think they'll let loose a little bit more than Cy Ray will. I think Massoff and Taylor are going to make a direct point that what Judge Hippler did was ridiculous and uncalled for. And real quick, I want to say hello to Pete. Metal Mayhem is in the house supporting Miss Kiki and I. Definitely appreciate you, Pete. Good to see you. I'm looking forward to it. And I think Cy Ray's going to have a response that may rattle a few. Like, it's going to shake the booth a little bit, but I think it's going to really be put into place by Ann Taylor and Massoff.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I would take it back. I couldn't agree with you more. It's interesting to hear the in-person takeaway, and having it be even more breathtaking in person than it was. Because I was listening to the trial, and honestly, I was paying attention to size, what they were saying about Cy, but I was doing something else. And the second it came out, I mean, it just rang through my ears. While you were acknowledging the chat, I just have to do a couple quick thank yous really quickly to Phil the Gilbertian Biggs. Thank you so much for the 12 Swamp Roads memberships. Same thing, Angel D, thank you for the 5 Swamp Roads memberships. And Phil, thank you again for another round of Swamp Rose memberships. I also wanted to say thank you to Mikey. I appreciate the gifted memberships. And I saw Ashley was in here earlier, and she did a super chat that said, and Ashley, nice to see you again, by the way. She said, the state's theory is also a conspiracy. And I thought that was a great super chat to leave. But I want to elaborate on what you said about the judge. There's a saying for those in the audience who've been to church before, and it's like from out of your mouth flows the words of your heart. And my question is, who is in the judge's ear? Who's in the judge's ear that one of the utterances or what flows through his mouth when he's not in a moment of self-awareness is Cyrea's conspiracy theory? Is the professional surrounding him? Is that his wife? I mean, none of my business or anything, but I'm just curious, like, where did he come up with the term conspiracy theory applied to Cyrea? Was it naturally the term that came to him, or is this a sidebar conversation, with other prosecutors or people within the field? Is this out of your mouth flows the thoughts and words of your heart? So where did that come from? It just curiosity. It's not like we're going to get an answer to that question. And then also back to Massoff, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think she's just very masterful at her profession. So I think of body language in terms of vocal tone as well. And Massoff actually doesn't just have control of her presence in the room. She has control of all of her facial muscles. All of us know when she throws a look over at the prosecution, because we're so used to seeing her cheeks engaged and a nice little, the size of her mouth drawn upwards. That's not an accident. That's somebody who's in control of every muscle in their body, including their face. And it's very professional, and it serves her very well in what she does. But the control over what comes out of her mouth was impressive. Ann Taylor's response was also incredibly masterful in that hearing, and coming back and in real time, just absorbing what the judge says. Okay, that's all I wanted, was that voidured question from Balance. I'll take it. Knowing when she gets a win, when you get that yes, shut up. In life, when you get a yes, shut up. And so I did notice that too. It was impressive to watch in that really trying moment. And it would be interesting to sit. You mentioned something about hearing the words and the difference in their words coming out of their mouth. And what I wrote down while you were saying that is, it would be interesting to see both of their responses on paper, the judge and I probably, now that you said that, will go read the transcript and see the difference in the points that they were making during that exchange. It is always different when you read it on paper versus hearing it come out of their mouths delivered the way they want you to hear it. I'll stop now.
Well, no, don't ever worry about stopping. You're making extremely valid points. And the one thing I'll add, and I'll leave it kind of at this, from my takeaway from what I saw in that very courtroom, the one lawyer in that courtroom that I would put my trying to beat a case in a courtroom in their hands would be Massoff. If I could have her as my lead attorney in any of my past cases, it would have been amazing. You could just tell she cares, she works hard, she's prepared, she's well voiced. She's just, everything about her just rings to, that's who you want on your side. And I think, when we get to this trial, keep your eyes on Massoff. She is going to dominate the jury's attention in this trial. They are going to fixate on her. They are going to listen to every word she has to say. When she walks in the courtroom, they're going to watch every footstep she takes. And even the prosecution, I think, takes a step back. I watched them all do it. And I watched Bill Thompson step up to the podium right after Massoff left the podium. And he was literally speaking as if he had just come in from the coldest day of snow, shaking, couldn't get a grasp or a hold of his voice. And Jen and I looked at each other and said, I think he just pooped his pants. Like, clearly, it looks like he just pooped his pants, and he's acting like that. And that's because he knows he's up against a force when it comes to Massoff. Like, I was not impressed with Becca Barlow at all. I don't think she had a good voice in the courtroom. I don't think a jury is going to listen to her. I had a hard time listening to her, and I was trying to force myself to do it. I don't think the judge understood what she was trying to explain, and I don't think she knew how to explain it differently. So I struggle with Becca Barlow. I know she's a huge team member, and I know she's going to make a big difference. I just don't feel like that's going to be at the podium talking to either the judge or the jury. I think they need to be very careful with that. I think this needs to come down to Ann Taylor and Massoff doing 95% of the talking in that courtroom. And I would say that 75% of that needs to be Massoff. She needs to do the opening. She needs to do the direct examination of their experts. And she needs to do the closings. I would allow Ann Taylor, if it was my defense team and I had the choice, I would say, okay, you do the cross examinations and take people apart. But I would be all about letting Massoff control the entire narrative in front of that jury.
Yeah, about the Becca Barlow testimony was not what I expected either. I don't know what it was, and again, it's the way she's a scientist. It's the way you explain things. It just wasn't. It didn't resonate. The argument didn't resonate the way that it should have if they wanted it in lemony from the jury. And I agree with you on that. And I think it boiled down to, and in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, but it boiled down to, if we want to solidify the term transfer DNA. And I do think that maybe, I don't know, I don't think touch DNA is necessarily the operative word that people should be using. Maybe fingerprint within fingerprint DNA. Is the touch DNA the industry, the scientific standard? Is touch DNA synonymous with transfer DNA? I never heard that argument until the judge said it. So I just don't know. Was there a better argument? Was something missed? But I certainly don't know if the point was driven home to me watching it. I've certainly had that point driven home to me watching certain Netflix specials and reading certain articles. So I know it can be done, but it didn't resonate with me that day. And I have to agree with you. And then it's kind of funny, just kind of like continuing our conversation. I've been telling AR, like, I was talking about comparisons with the Johnny Depp trial. Sorry, everybody. And we have this conversation. Who's going to be the Johnny Depp of the trial? Will there be somebody who just grasps every word, and is able to take the most seasoned prosecutor and turn the words around into something that the jury absorbs and instantly understands and connects with? And are we setting, sorry for saying this, you guys, are we setting Massoff up to be the Johnny Depp of the trial? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it is potential, but it's also, if you go back to the OJ Simpson days, and they had a dream team of lawyers defending OJ Simpson. Cochran was still the money grabber. Like, he was the guy you watched and you hung on every limb of what that man was going to say within that courtroom, because he did it with such emphasis and emotion and the looks in his face. And I agree with you. I think that jury is going to see the look in Massaw's face and the way that she presents things in an amazing way that grasps them. Becca Barlow couldn't even get the judge to understand what she was trying to say. And Becca Barlow struggled to hit the pause button and say, okay, let me explain this in a different way. Let me break this down for you in an easier to understand way. Instead, she kept trying to talk, like you said, like a scientist. Well, guess what? Hardly anybody in that courtroom during her examinations of witnesses and experts are going to be scientists. So you better get capable of breaking this down where people will listen and understand. And if they don't, they should be able to ask you a question that you can break down in a better way and make it more understandable. Again, I'm going to excuse myself for 1 sec here, Swamp. I need to take some insulin. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hope
be right
everything's okay. I mean, I just want to, I'm going to turn to the chat and read some of your, comments regarding what we just said. But just another talking point the chat can think about too is language and what the judge is going to allow, because I seem to think that the judge sort of alluded to what he is going to allow and not allow in trial. I do think closing arguments, it's almost like not an argument anymore. They'll be able to use the word murder. I don't think that the judge is going to allow psychopath, sociopath. And now in this day and age, we're well aware those terms come with pretty specific definitions. And so you can't just go throwing out a term that could be defaming or slanderous when there's an actual medical term involved, that is quite well known. So I'll throw that into the conversation. Let me turn to some of your comments here. I'm just going to go work my way up. Wait. I have to read the comments before. If it were my channel, I'd just be willy-nilly reading them, but I'm on AR's channel too, so I got to be a little bit responsible here. There's a lot of funny stuff in here. Anne needs, Blackhawk 57 Magnum says, Anne needs to put Agent Balance on the stand. Maybe she can discredit him. It's possible. And I don't know if Agent Balance is going to, I don't know if they were, I don't know if Agent Balance is going to be in the stand. He's definitely going to be voir dired for at least one question, according to this hearing, but I don't know. I mean, well, they're going to have to put Agent Balance on the stand because who else is going to talk up against Cyree? Let's see what else we have here. So Elser says, where's the other person's DNA then? They said it was a single source. Is it interesting? On the knife sheath itself, there appears to be, if I'm understanding everything correctly, an unidentified source, and chat, correct me if I'm wrong, of blood DNA. Gosh, I wonder at this point, they have to have identified these. And I wonder, and I know AR is going to transition into this segment because we've been talking about it, is possible other alternative suspects. Because if Ann Taylor is going to put her hands on Brian Kohlberger's shoulder when she knew all of this information, minus possibly recently they have found some other alternative leads in some of the new discoveries since January, but they essentially had all the same information when they put their hands on Brian Kohlberger's shoulder and said, Your Honor, our client is innocent. And if their client is innocent by definition, it's an alternative suspect theory that's the defense that his defense is going to be going for. So who are going to be the alternative suspects? And, and another interesting thing we learn is some of the people that were initially thought of as people of interest, some of those people actually were reported into the tip line, which is another interesting fact we just learned too. Are you back, or are you?
Yep, I'm here. I'm sorry. I had to run and take a little bit of insulin. Damn being a diabetic. Let me tell you, damn being a diabetic.
AR, thank you for putting up with us and staying live for an hour and 15 minutes and getting through. I know that even the timing's bad. We appreciate your time.
Well, you know me, I'm that 3-hour live guy. I don't know how it happens every time. I was even talking to Lucky about the other day, and you and I have accomplished this numerous times too, and it's unreal. The conversation gets so good, the back and forth, and then the community engaging and asking questions and talking. It's hard to not just get on a roll. Last night, Lucky and I had to slam on the brake pedal because we got to that 2-hour mark, and I could just tell Lucky's like, let's hit the brakes. It's going to go on for days. I'm like, yeah, it will. Yeah, it will.
It's so true. I mean, because here we are, and I mean, maybe we should even segue into it now, but the whole topic we want to talk about is these alternative suspect defense theories that are coming out that we're learning little teeny snippets of. But we haven't even got there yet because we're still talking about everybody, all the players that were in the hearing recently. It's just so much to talk about. I know how the conversation gets derailed very easily.
Yeah, and this alternative perp conversation, so I can backtrack just a little bit and why it became so kind of engaging for me. When I first arrived at the Ada County Courthouse the morning of the hearing, Jen and I literally got there so early. I mean, it was ridiculously early. It was like 5:30 in the morning. And I thought for sure we'd be the first people there. And I walked up and there was already major equipment set up. You could tell this was professional. This wasn't anything like what I show up with. And of course, me, you know me, Kiki, I just walk right up to the guy. Jen's like, oh my God, here he goes. And I walk right up, I stick my hand out, I introduce myself. And I'm like, I'm here for this. He says, yeah, me too. And he asked me, he looked at me, he says, what do you think the biggest part of today's hearing is going to be? I said, well, I'm going to break it down for you. I think there's two very important parts of this hearing to me personally that I think is going to affect this case. And that's one, the affidavit by Cyree, because that puts into perspective that the FBI legitimately conducted this investigation. And all right, let me kind of put it the way I put it to him. I don't give two shits about the 7 days that everybody's talking about, because the FBI has their own ways behind the scenes to get this information well before that 7-day, 12-day, 500-day, whatever it might be. The FBI had the capability of conducting this investigation, and then Cyree knows them. And I believe Cyree has the actual timing records. I think he's got them. And he's just trying to put them on, like, okay, you guys keep talking about the AT&T way of doing things through the GLDC. Well, I'm trying to tell you there's another way. And it was done. And whether they want to admit to that or not, it's like the IGG. They're either going to admit it or they're not going to, but they can pin it all on Cyree they want to and just wait till he hits him across the face with the timing records. He's like, look, I got him. So that was number one that I was telling the guy. But number two is exactly the segue that we're going into, which is the alternative perp discussion, because so many of us have the everyday discussions of who coulda, who shoulda, who woulda committed this crime. And then we get into the DNA evidence, those that were found and not tested, and those that want to be talked about. And, there's so much that goes into that there's so much discussion what can be had when it comes to an alternative perp. But I did want to get with you and kind of share with our community the way that this works out heading into the trial, and the way it has to be presented at trial is very delicate. It's another investigation taking place by the defense. The defense has their investigators onto these tips that are now coming in, and we heard it in the courtroom. They've been given some tips recently that they're 100% into investigation mode on. And you got to take into some of the things that were said. They're utilizing camera footage from the University of Idaho campus. That's very interesting. That's very, very interesting. So, I mean, that now there's a little bit of precedence for all of us that have been discussing the possibility of alternative perps and why we feel like there could be. Well, now there's a little segue that we're not the only ones that possibly think that way. And the defense is investigating it. And right now we're into the discovery period for the defense to have to, just like the prosecution did when the defense asked for evidence, the prosecution had to turn it over. Well, now we're in the discoverable period for the prosecution to get that from the defense. And, you know, they're going to have to turn over everything that they learn in their investigation. But also, this could potentially run right into the pretrial time frame, the pretrial hearings. And in that case, if the defense can make a good argument in regards to real alternative perpetrators, not a theory, but they've got real evidence that leads to real people, this case will be delayed. This will not go to trial on time.
Right. And so there's that, but there's also the fact that all she really needs to do, and Black Hawk 57 Magnum had brought up this point, is create that reasonable doubt or show that somebody else had opportunity to do the crime as well. And that reasonable doubt can be placed right into the jurors. But, you know, back to the U of I footage being a place where they got info, it just brings me back to the timeline in several aspects. Number one, the 405 timeline, for several reasons, especially when you're talking about alternative suspects, because there could be some sort of cover up or nefarious activity involved. Like the 405 timeline is so significant. And I think there are other things that play a role in that now that we've seen the camera authentication. Like one of them would be the balcony video. Like, I mean, none of us actually believed none of us realized that story was legitimate, that there were people out there that early in the morning who saw or heard something suspicious and actually pulled out their cell phone and recorded suspect vehicle 1. Well, if suspect vehicle 1 isn't the suspect, was it things like that at the end of the day? If Brian Kohlberg was found innocent, is it things like that threw the timeline off? I'll toss it to you, but I can go back to timelines because I brought up a really interesting point in my last live stream. I'll make it really quick. When it comes to the FBI and tracking Brian Kohlberger and the December 19th date being when they found Brian Kohlberger, I brought out a Newsweek article. Thank you to Mikey for bringing it to my attention. But it's the FBI director, Andrew McCabe, coming out and talking about how they were surveying. This is the director of the FBI, not a source to the New York Times, suggesting they had been tracking Brian Kohlberger all the way from Pullman. And they were tracking him through teams and switching off until he got to Pennsylvania. Now, if this was just a random source, I wouldn't be reporting so hard on it, but it's literally Andrew McCabe, the director, the ex-director of the FBI. I mean, what do you have to say about that? That can't be December 19th now. And now does it all make sense why Christy Gonzalez is saying, yeah, they had his name on the 13th. And yes, we saw 4chan with no warrants to 4chan. So allegedly, possibly law enforcement activity on 4chan, and then denoting on the 7th when Fry gets in that U-Haul van with Pennsylvania written across it. And we all knew about the shithole woods of Pennsylvania long before them. And this is weeks before the 19th. So I think there's been indications, putting aside the fact that the grand federal grand jury that likely had Brian Kohlberger's name was likely convened a week after the unalivings. I mean, all signs to me point to the timeline is BS. But the problem is that Ann Taylor and the defense team agree to it. So have they just given the prosecution enough rope to, you know, I don't know. I'm sorry. I know you got a comment up there. I'll stop.
Well, this is for you. First, I wanted to say thank you to Ashley for the super chat there for Miss Swamp Rose. It's always appreciated. Why don't you go ahead and maybe give a shot at this question there?
Okay. So Ashley says, it is not a conflict of interest that the prosecutors are connected to the University of Idaho. That's a great question because we know Ann Taylor is a sorority girl and she went to U of I. Now, as far as the others' history, I know didn't Judge John Judge go? I don't know about the other connections. You might know a little bit more, and I know the chat does. What do you know about that, AR? And then we'll comment on whether it's a conflict of interest.
You know, it's funny because obviously I was just in Boise, and a lot of people are very homey in Idaho. It seems like not everybody leaves. They stay within their community. They support their community. I grew up in a part of the country in New Mexico that the very same thing. Like the majority of the people stayed home and got careers around where we grew up. And do I feel as though it's a conflict of interest that the prosecutors are connected to the University of Idaho? No, I don't. In my own personal self, and maybe that wouldn't be the fan favorite answer to that, but I personally feel as though they take, for the most part, their jobs very seriously, and you know they are pursuing justice. Now, do I feel as though there are issues that surround the University of Idaho itself in regards to them tearing down the house and those very things? Yes, I do. But until I guess I'm a foreigner to all of that, so it's hard for me to get into it. I'm not one that's really spoken much about the involvement of the University of Idaho and stuff like that. I've listened to others speak upon it, Kiki, but I personally haven't. I don't know enough about it. I don't talk much about Scott Green. I know there's a lot of financial ties to everything around not only the area but the college and the purchase of a new college and then this case. And I just really hope that our ethics in life and our capability of handling things like this to protect our communities and find the right people that commit these crimes to get real justice for the victims doesn't surround a connection to the university.
That's a great answer. And I agree with your sentiments. There's a couple things I wanted to bring up. Now, I know that I think that when I've heard connections, actually, I don't want to speak on this. I have heard some things about the judge and some different real estate transactions, but I'm going to stop there. I don't think I should speak on that. But I will say that the chat brought up to me is Jeff Nye and Bill Thompson both went to U of I. Judge Hippler went to Boise State. As far as conflict of interest, you know, I mean, there are only so many. It's hard to find the perfect, you know, ideally we do have enough professionals to carry every conflict of interest, but, you know, we have to also trust that some people have some sort of way to set aside their biases and do their job. However, the part that makes me completely cringe is the fact that the house was torn down and we're talking about the replicas in the trial. Because, you know, why have a replica when you could have the home of scale to walk through? And now the necessity to go ahead and spend the tax dollar on it's not even about the tax dollar. It's about the concept where you could have the perfect piece of evidence to display versus something that will never mimic the original, particularly other feelings. Like we talk about the presence and how that affects the room of like Massoth. Okay. The presence of the house is going to affect the perception of the crime scene, and the fact that it was torn down. And then what just because Ashley was bringing up conflict of interest, this is where I'm going with this. We think about the fact that some of the families had expressed the right to possibly have a lawsuit if they found wrongdoing either from the city, aka the police department, or the university in some capacity in the investigation or leading up to the crime. So the house wasn't just the largest piece of evidence in this quadruple homicide, it was also the largest piece of evidence in that possible lawsuit. Which I don't know where that lawsuit's going, because I believe their deadline was like 2 years. And that I think was up in March. I don't know if anyone had an extension, but I always found that odd too, because they had reserved that right to look for liability, probably thinking that the trial would have already happened by now. And so
they've all extended. They all have extensions on that.
So, I mean, and it goes to the point, it's like, how would they know if there were any wrongdoing if they haven't had the trial and they haven't seen how evidence was gathered, collected, and applied? So it's a really fascinating conversation, but it is hard not to feel that kind of like knot in your stomach when you think about the demo of the house. Now, as far as keeping the house up and how that would have affected the community, I am not going to sit there and pretend I don't think that house would have not affected the community having it there. Of course it would. Of course it was a grim reminder, as Scott Green said. But the debate about tearing down the house was so soon, it felt to me, after the crime. And not only that, is when they fully put the green light on it, it was only 30 days of general discussion in the public about it, which doesn't, again, seem like enough time. I don't know. But the demo of the house is where I really get into conflict of interest, because I think there is some sort of conflicts of interest there too. So,
well, in regards to the house, one, even the victims' families didn't want that house to come down. They truly believe the house needed to stay, and they still say that to this day. I think it's quite clear the house came down because of the University of Idaho's push for that house to come down. It had nothing to do with those in and around this case, because prosecution's not going to push to tear down the house. Defense isn't going to push to tear down the house. The only people that were pushing to tear down that house was absolutely the University of Idaho, because it cut in to their ability to attract new students to come to their university. And that's the name of the game. Get as many paying students to come to your college so that you obviously are profitable in what you do. Now, in regards to people involved in this case potentially being tied to the universities, whether it be University of Idaho or Boise State, of course they're going to be. For the most part, in smaller areas, when someone attends a college and gets their degree, a large majority of them stay within the local area because that's where they get hired at their initial positions of work. So I don't have a problem with that. Not everybody leaves. I have a father that stayed in the area where he graduated from college, and he is now 70-something years old. He's lived there the majority of his life and loves it, and the community loves him, and it's a great fit. So maybe, I can't really argue with that. Real quick, before I throw it back into your court over there, Kiki, the hearing that got canceled on the 16th was actually in regards to the jury questionnaire. And at the end of the motion to eliminate hearings, Bill Thompson stood up. He requested the judge make a decision in regards to what he wanted to do, and the judge went ahead and decided they would do that via Zoom or whatever it might be. So he he even said that could happen back around the pretrial hearings. So the April 16th hearing was canceled because there was no reason for it to continue to go forward. There was nothing happening on that day. The 10th had been set aside for a second day if necessary for the motion in limine hearings, and they wrapped those up in day one. So they didn't need that day either. So no actual hearings went by with that were, you know, impactful to everything going on.
Yeah, there's so many. I want to 100% agree with your sentiments. So I'm a small town girl at heart, and you know, I wish I lived in the small town that I came from. But I agree with giving back to your community. Like I would wholeheartedly agree with giving back to the people that gave to you, help make you the person that you are. So I totally agree with that, and that's why a lot of people move to a smaller city like Moscow or whatnot, or a lovely area like that, because they want that small town feel. They want the involvement of the community and the local government, and not just the person with the most flashy, you know, way to get elected or whatnot. So I definitely agree with that. There were, I'm just trying to, the chat is going fast, but I did see there were a couple good comments in here. Best to me keeps asking why I'm turning off my camera. I'm trying to be professional for AR, so I'm trying not to flick my hair on camera. I've got a bad habit. I'm not the only one. Twizzle Stick plays with his beard.
It's so funny. You're talking about professionalism, and like I was telling you when we came into this, Kiki, I was practically falling off the couch last night on the live with Jen and Lucky. Like, we have this big, you know, cuddle couch. I got 3 dogs up there with me, just kicking me and laying on me, and Jen sitting next to me being all kind of like you, professional, trying to do this great live, and I'm halfway off the couch, you know, underneath dogs. And this is just how we are. And we love our community. This is where we're most comfortable. Yeah. This is why we're here. You know, I always have it in the back of my mind that the drama and the unnecessary jabs at people and all these things just makes me kind of want to step away and be done with this. But it's the community. It's people like, you know, you and Lucky as creators that keep me around, and then just the amazing community. And let me, I do want to say something real quick, and I haven't had the opportunity to say this. I do want to say this. When I got to Boise and I was able to meet up with Twizzle Stick, it was actually an amazing experience. These are 2 people. They come from 2 different necks of the woods. We've never met each other for anything. We've only talked behind the scenes via either a YouTube deal like this, or we've text messaged on our phones. Never had I had the opportunity to shake the hand of someone from the platform. And you know, when Twizzle Stick and I ran into each other, it was a pleasant surprise that he was just genuinely a good person. He was cool to be around. He was cool to talk to. He was cool to hang out with. I trusted him around my family. He came in and he played with my dogs. He had the conversation with my wife. It was just a good time. We went out to eat that night. We attended the hearing. You know, we got there early, and it was just, I want to say thank you, Twizzle Stick. It was a real pleasure to meet you, and I hope we get to bump into each other again, have another lunch or another dinner, whatever it might be. And I'm sure it was interesting for people, Kiki, that they probably haven't seen many creators come together actually in person, like in person, on camera together. And we brought that to the community. So it was really cool.
It was really special, and it was nice to see 2 people get together off platform to create to just cover, you know, I keep making it like you're creating content. You're giving us very exclusive coverage. And it's exclusive coverage that we would expect from mainstream media, but they just like to fall short on everything, particularly in this case.
Well, mainstream media is not going to take you on a walk with their wife and their dogs to the river in Boise and show you that Boise's actually beautiful. We were happily surprised to see how nice it was. The weather was beautiful, but let me tell you, Kiki, we went out to this little restaurant for breakfast, and I kind of put on my little face like we're still in Vegas, and I'm ready for the personality of Vegas, the shit show that Vegas is, and the way that people disrespect and mistreat you. And we walk into this little place, and I gotta say, they were the nicest people you would run into. I mean, like, even Jen smiled. They said, "We're not moving here, Jen. I'm not moving here." But then we went on that walk next to the river, and I'm like, well, I could go fishing a couple of times a week. I could do this. And it's just kind of a shout out to Boise of just how nice they were. Even driving through the drive-through of a Wendy's, and it was one of the most cheerful young ladies at the drive-through. We even tipped her. Like, we were just so happy that someone actually was positive, laughing, saying hello, how are you? It's so nice to see you. And I'm like, what planet are you from? Like, where are you from? Not used to this, and just an amazing experience. But it was made even more amazing to know that those of us from all afar that live a different lifestyle, that live a different area, that work different jobs, that do different things with our lives, we can still bump into each other and truly respect and enjoy the time that we're able to spend. And I had that with Twiz. He came and hung out. My dog, I think you were on the live with us, Kiki, when my dog was literally manhandling Twiz's beard. Just couldn't get enough of Twizzy. And I think that my little Xander is still in love. Still in love with Twizzy.
I heard that Twiz got very famous after that he became a little bit of a celebrity on Facebook. And, I'm telling you, those dogs, I don't know why you don't bust out the dogs in the middle of our live stream sometime. Come on. That was awesome. I love the Pitties. You guys should really visit. If you like dogs, visit Pitty Goes Stripping, AR's wife's channel, Jen's channel. She does really fun things with the dogs. But people like to see dogs, AR. We need more pit bulls in the live.
I know it's hard to do when I'm up here on the desktop, but when I'm on the laptop or something, it's so much easier to do. And they get involved, and they jump in and have a good time. I'm not like Jen. I don't really have the patience to be buried for the entirety of a live where I'm underneath dogs trying to talk true crime. But we have plans. We have plans to integrate them more into things, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. That's another thing too that Unfiltered Lucky is going to bring to the table. He has two beautiful dogs himself. Saint Bernard and a German Shepherd that are like his kids, and he's going to get them involved. And I guess I probably should just let people know that, like you, Kiki, wanted to work with Jen and the dogs. Unfiltered Lucky's going to jump in with Pitties Go Stripping as well, and they're going to do some work, and should be fun to see. So.
Well, I'm just taking care of something in the chat real quick.
Lucky and I are trying to make plans to get together, whether that be in his area or in mine. That we're going to try to get together and do a live together.
You listen. Our community wants to say we love when you have Lucky on, so do another one. That was so fun. And Jen, it's really nice to hear some of the space that you're going to be filling when you're getting your medical attention is you're going to have Jen come in and fill some of that space and keep the channel, active when you can't be there. When is your operation coming up? Because, I just realized we've got Tommy going in for an operation in like 3 days, unless something has changed. And you have one coming up, not to change the subject, but AR, when are you going to be taking a break?
So April 22nd is left eye start date. May 5th is right eye start date. And then I've scheduled literally for the next 6 to 8 months of surgeries. Just depends on what body part we're going to be working on. So I'm going to try to stay fully engaged. I won't be on YouTube full time, but I'm going to still try to jump on with you, Kiki. I'm going to try to work with Unfiltered Lucky. I know my wife is going to take my place in working with you. I know you were interested in doing that with Jen to get her side and her points in regards to true crime and cases in the Idaho4. And I know Unfiltered Lucky is going to do that as well. I don't know how long I'll, I don't know. I wish I could give everybody a better answer on that. I'm nervous, but we'll see. We'll see.
Well, we're keeping you in. We've got some time beforehand. We're going to create some good content before then, but keep us posted, and we're all going to keep you we're going to keep you in our thoughts and prayers. And also, I just mentioned it a moment ago, I don't know when AR and I are going to be live again, so I just want to make sure I'm letting you know for our community. Like I said before, Tommy is going in for surgery as well, so let's keep Tommy Jude Once Upon a Crime Time in our thoughts and prayers as well, please.
Absolutely. I'm just going to make one comment real quick, and then we'll throw it back to you real quick, Kiki. Anybody that's in here that has spent time both with Kiki, myself, Pete, Unfiltered Lucky, you guys have gotten to know me on a very personal level with my dogs and my wife and everything of that nature. I'm a part of no affiliation. I will never be a part of any affiliation other than those that are trying to better themselves and move forward. So anybody that wants to step into the chat, I don't have anything that I need to say to anybody in regards to the accusations or what you're bringing from my past isn't today. I am a part of no affiliation at all. I'm not going to continue to go down this path. I'm not going to continue to speak about it. So if that's something that you feel as though you need to speak of, go have your drama party somewhere else, because I don't need to speak about it. I'm very proud to be working with people like Kiki, Pete with Metal Mayhem, Unfiltered Lucky, my wife. There's so many good people that I don't even need to worry about what my past was, because I know what my today is and I know what my future will be. So I'm proud of that. Proud of that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Kiki, but sometimes things have to be spoken upon. So
For the record, I tried to hide the comment before you saw it.
There's 20 of them. Can't hide them all. There is records. I see them. It's okay. I'm not hiding from anything, ladies and gentlemen.
Actually, that's a good point.
I'm not hiding from anything, because I think everybody here knows I've been very honest about my past. I was not a perfect person. I lied. I stole. I cheated. I did things I wish I had never done when I look back from today, but I can't change it because it happened back then. So sure, is there parts of my life that I'm disappointed in? Obviously. But I've lived through that. I've experienced it. I've grown from it. And I'm proud of that, because I'm not still that same person. And I think we all grow. We all mature. We all become better people if we make that effort. Just I was having a discussion, with Kiki. I quit drinking. I quit smoking cigarettes, all because I wanted to. I've refocused myself on better things. And that's why I'm able to be here with such amazing people that support me, like Kiki, like Unfiltered Lucky, like the people within this community that truly are looking at me as the individual that accepts my faults of the past and uses them to step forward to better myself moving forward. I want to be like everybody else. I want to be the best version of myself. I want to be successful, and I'm willing to accept my downfalls to get to that point. So I don't allow people to trip me up anymore. I've seen it. How do you send receipts? Email them to her, email them to me. I mean, I've shown Kiki receipts. I mean, I don't know what else I got to do. If you truly believe that, then that's on you. It's on you. But anyway, Kiki, let's not get sidetracked of our actual show, because people feel like they have receipts on something that has nothing to do with the Idaho4, by the way. Nothing. So.
Well, let's see. I saw a comment by Happy Hounds. I was working my way up, and there are a couple of them here. U of I has, and this goes back to, just so you guys know what I'm talking about. We were talking about conflict of interest, which is a legitimate conversation. Everybody has conflict of interest conversations when it comes to the legal aspect of things. So Happy Hounds was saying U of I has a law school. In 1972, it seemed there were about 10 to 15 attorneys. It now has 170 attorneys, law firms. There are now 96 listed practicing attorneys in Moscow. It's called Moscow Curse. And then Happy Hounds goes on to say the Moscow Curse says once you've lived there, you can't ever really leave. And sure enough, in 20 years, I saw many people leave, and most of them came back. And I mean, like I was saying, at heart, I'm a small town girl. And you know what? If I was left to my own devices, I would be right back in that small town on my mama's porch. Like it doesn't, I get it. And that's because you want to give back to the people that, that built, that you want to build the community that built you. You want to contribute, you want to give back. And I get that. But then when you see how impressive their law school has grown since 1972, you can see why there are a lot of people within the judicial system that we're watching right now actually went to the U of I.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even, I don't know. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting area up there when I was up there, and I can see why people that graduate out of those colleges, and a lot of them do stay home. I mean, I'm not sure a lot of them have other places that really interest them to move to. And U of I, it seems as though they are productive in creating programs that build success within their communities, whether that be as a lawyer, whether that be as another route for a business, official, or whatever it might be. I think that we have to be very careful, when we say, well, these people are tied to, they're tied to their local community. And yes, in today's society, Ashley, you're right. Younger generation of individuals, if you're comparing someone like a Kaylee to someone like a Bill Thompson, these are two different generations, two different educational backgrounds. So it would almost be like saying, let's compare A.R. Hayes to A.R. Hayes's stepfather, who graduated from university with very high credentials, became a very established financial broker and banker, did it for over 50 years, became very successful in the community. And then you had me. I was a on-the-go individual my entire life. That's why I moved away at the age of 15, because I didn't fit in to wanting to stay directly within the community, and that's okay. Kaylee had an idea; she wanted to move to Texas. That's understandable. She was a much younger age than some of the people that were directly speaking.
Yeah, and you do tend to come back. And somebody else had made a comment about what other law schools are in the area, and we did bring it up earlier in the stream. The judge in this case, Judge Hippler, went to Boise State. So apparently Boise State has a law program too. I thought a really good comment by Giovanni back up at 11 o'clock. He says, people get upset and passionate when others disagree with them because they care. And that's okay, in my opinion. I totally agree more. And I think that's what I love so much about our audience is we get people from both sides asking really tough, real questions. And I have to say, like, I'm impressed by you and your show, all of my colleagues here on YouTube, the way that we cover this case so thoroughly, and like, you know, it just opens your eyes. How many other cases have I heard about? Because for those that don't know, this is my first true crime case that I've covered. You know, what other cases have I heard about where I didn't get to know all of these workups and all of this evidence that's being debated before trial, and how I always let that polished version of the trial be the version of what I've seen. And it just opens my eyes, especially about the practices of gathering evidence. That in itself is a huge debate, I think, the investigative practices and how they gather evidence, chain of custody, those kinds of things. Even if you are going to assume that the court makes the right decision about allowing the right evidence every time, just as a general citizen, knowing the issues that arise with evidence gathering and investigative work, it's also really interesting. So, like, to recap, the statement Giovanni had said is people get upset and passionate when others disagree with them because they care, and that's okay, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree. And even as content creators, we get emotional about the things we're talking about because we get so dug into the trenches, and literally the discussions that we get into get so deep that we feel like we're becoming a part of kind of the research of the case. I mean, we'll obviously never become a part of the case. We're not family. We're not directly involved with the defense or the prosecution, but we spend the majority of our days researching, discussing things about the case, gathering information from those who share it with us. Then we go out and we do our checks on that information to learn more about it, kind of get a better feel for it. Some pan out as good information, some pan out as nothing. But the thing about it is, and I want people to understand, we're open to any discussion that's a respectful discussion in regards to the cases. I don't shy away from any discussion because either I feel like someone's innocent or guilty, because that's not how I look at things. I want to learn. I want to learn what's going on. I want to better understand what's going on. And let me tell you, Kiki has offered me the benefit of learning from her through her great team of people that research behind the scenes, that share information, bring information. Let me tell you, they're amazing. They even message me from time to time, and it's amazing the conversations that we get into and the points that they share with us. And I couldn't be more thankful. I couldn't be more thankful for it.
The anytime I get the chance to just say thank you to my community, thank you to my Discord server, my viewers, my commenters, my live chat, and my mods. You folks are my researchers. You give me my angles, my stories. You get me to see what is getting traction within the conversation. And honestly, it just gives the best version of content for us to present to the general audience because of you. So every chance I get, I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you to my viewers, particularly my mods, my chat, my commenters, and my Discord server. Thank you. And thank you for acknowledging them too, AR.
Absolutely. I mean, they're amazing. I get, I get the messages as well, and I get the heads ups, and this is a very difficult case across the board. It's a tragedy, and it's hard to sometimes lay your head on your pillow and think about victims, and it's hard to think about the justice system and the way that they're conducting the investigation and the prosecution. There's so much that goes into this. It gets overwhelming and it gets tiring. And at the end of the day, I mean, the one thing that I would like many people to understand that I'm appreciative of, when I look at the normals that are within our community and at our chats, you guys are some of the most open-hearted, open-minded, good debates, good discussions. And you also understand what we're here for. We're here to discuss a case. We're talking about a case. We're talking about victims. We're talking about a defendant. We don't have to come here and attack each other personally. I have a whole nother channel, Kiki, that I don't utilize it much, but I think maybe I just need to open the door to the other channel that could be more about me, because I'm not here to talk about me 90% of the time. I want to talk everything outside of myself. I just bring a perspective of somebody that's been through the system. That doesn't mean that I want to dig deep and try to tell everybody how impressive my resume of my young age criminal activity was. That has nothing to do with our conversations here. And I appreciate everybody that, allows us to talk real and good, true crime. So I'm appreciative of that. Did you mute yourself?
No, I had a brilliant thought, and then I was doing something in studio trying to boost my lash. I wanted to bring up a segue into another subject while we have our community here, while we can talk about a few different things. There is one subject we haven't started to talk about yet, and we're already at the 2-hour mark. I want to throw it out there because I really do want this to be part of the conversation. And this is where we have to put a trigger warning down, because we are going to be discussing the crime scene specifically. We're going to be discussing the second floor, because that's where this conversation really gets heated, or this conversation AR can share his own personal opinions on. But what I'm about to say is, to the audience, I want you to open your mind and think to yourself, could we be looking at a case where we've only heard about one weapon involved? Is this a case where multiple weapons were involved? And what have we heard to this point that makes us think about multiple weapons involved? And I have a handful of points to bring up, but I want AR to start this because this was his initial idea. If you want to start it, AR.
Yeah. And I'll just do mine briefly, because I do want to get into your points. And when I first started doing content creations, one of the aspects I brought to the table was building the visualization of this crime scene from a criminal's aspect when you're pulling up to how you would commit this crime. And I did a series of single perp, and then I did a multi-perp of what my feelings were about when it came to this. And I'll tell you, it's never wavered or changed in my mind. There, in my opinion, is no possible way this 3-story home with this many people in it was this crime committed with one person, one weapon. It's not, in my opinion, possible. There had to have been more than one weapon. The devastation and the differences of wounds that have been explained to us, not only, okay, look, I've had people say, well, Steve Gonzalez said that the wounds don't match, and I see it in here, and I agree. He did. But guess what? The medical examiner, Mabit, or God, I just never even paid her enough attention because I just had a bad vibe about her from the beginning. But she clearly made this seem as though not only was it multi-weapons, but it could potentially be more than two. So I just kind of sat back on that until this latest hearing, and Ann Taylor clearly made the statement, we want to prove and we believe two perps, two weapons. That makes sense, especially when you tie it together with, I'm here to help you. Jen and I had a great conversation about this the other night. Then she called me crazy. But it started as a great conversation. I'm telling you, it really was. It just doesn't make sense for Kohlberger to walk up to any victim and say, I'm here to help you. Because that would not be the demeanor of somebody that was taking the lives. They don't walk up and say, I'm here to help you, because that deflates the energy and the deep feel that they're getting from committing a crime of this nature. Now, somebody walking from a different area that potentially was a part of the crime saying, dude, calm down. I'm here to help you. Like, we got to pick this stuff up. We got to get out of here. We got to get this, whatever it might be. Then it's more understandable, and I've always felt that way. I've always felt the communication of I'm here to help you was from a second perp that was helping of the crime.
When you put it into context like that, it makes so much sense. I have tried to reason with that line. I do have my thoughts on why somebody would use that, but when you put it in terms of a second person being there, or the fact that somebody, I mean, like, I want to say some triggering things. I don't know. Like, we know that certain personalities who commit crimes thrive off fear, and without fear, they would abandon the crime because that's part of the way they get off on it. And, you know, so you would think a perp in a heightened sense, a heightened state, already unalive 2 to 3 people, wouldn't have a moment of calm reasoning to manipulate the victim before they go to, you know, just, and at that point, with all the noise, what would be the point? To stop them from running, to stop them from screaming. There's a dog barking, there's a body slam, there's people screaming, there's someone here, there's allegedly people running up and down the stairs and crying, and, you know, this is very disturbing, but, you know, singing allegedly, and just the noises. So what would be the point in saying that? Like, if it was a manipulative saying, I mean, I would imagine it would be to calm the perp down, or calm the victim down, or to stop the victim from running or screaming or something. Or there could be multiple perps, and the second perp came in and said something like that. But just going back to multiple weapons, like the forensics of it, this is where like that like anxiety starts coming in, and I start getting like a knot in my stomach, because I think, okay, so they had unidentified DNA at the crime scene, and the unidentified DNA was unidentified allegedly even like 6-7 months later. So with that forensics not being done, or the forensics were done, excuse me, I misspoke. The genetic genealogy not being done, it makes me think what else might not have been done. One of the things I was counting on when I started covering this case are the forensics revolving around the wounds. So a wound from a K-bar should have the forensic detail of the K-bar knife. It's going to have the forensics with this steel involved in creating that. Without a doubt, the knife would leave some sort of fragment inside the victim. In many cases, when the knife can break off, but aside from it breaking off, it leaves trace fragments within the wound. So the point I'm getting at is they should know how many weapons are used just alone from the forensics. But then you hear about like unidentified DNA not being tested, and it puts that, that knot in your stomach, like, oh my God, did they not test the elements of the metal within the wounds? Secondary to that, and you've brought this up before, this isn't a unique thought to me. AR is the one who put this in my head, is Ethan's golf clubs were never returned. And if you're looking for a go-to weapon in a house, a lot of people have brought up, well, you're going to grab something like a lamp or a golf club, like things you might see in a hallway or easy access to. Golf clubs would have been a weapon that could, be at arm's reach and would be able to maybe explain. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, but Ethan's golf clubs were never returned. And another thing that was never returned when we talk about multiple weapons, and again, I don't know, is Kaylee's cell phone. And again, these are all really difficult conversations to have. I hope everyone understands it's true crime trigger warning. But Kaylee's phone was never returned. And I mean, you don't need the physical phone to know the metadata and the forensics of it. Could the phone have been used as a weapon for one of the victims? But again, just back to what wasn't returned: a cell phone and some golf clubs. Are they part of it?
I think what's scary is we don't even know what they've taken from that home. Every day I've wondered, why have we not seen more and more evidence coming out about what was actually taken and removed from that home as evidence? And I want to say a big shout out. Unfiltered Lucky is in here, always giving his love to Miss Kiki, Small Pros, and myself. I definitely appreciate you, my friend. I mean, it's just difficult to think, and you have to stop for a minute. You have to pause, because we are getting to the point now that we're heading into the pre-trial, and we're getting into really the nitty-gritty right before trial happens. And for the most part, the discoverable evidence that's supposed to have been turned over from the prosecution to the defense, we're past that deadline. I know Ann Taylor said she's still getting some stuff trickling in, and that does happen as you move towards trial. That does happen. But do you really feel as though Ann Taylor, think about this, looking at the evidence against her client that's been laid out before her, would legitimately say that she believes there's two perps, two weapons? If it's clear as day, they've done all the proper testing and everything comes back to one weapon, she would know that. She would know who actually lost their lives first. She would know the blood transfer from which bodies it maneuvered its way through. She would know that entire thing, except for two reasons. There would be only two reasons why she wouldn't know that. One, the proper testing wasn't done, meaning the investigation is BS, meaning pretty much everything at the damn crime scene's worthless. Or two, there's more than one weapon. You can't follow which weapon did what. One knife took one knife took two, one knife took another one. Now you can't even track who lost their lives first or what order, because you can't connect the dots based off of one weapon. Ann Taylor would know that.
My camera was on. Oh my God.
Yeah, I was watching you pluck.
I thought I turned it off. I'm like, oh, I gotta fix that. It's like,
all right, everybody in the
bushy
chat.
eyebrow. I'm sorry.
Bushy eyebrows.
Everyone say, but let's embarrassing. I'm sorry.
See, Unfiltered Lucky, you joined right during bushy eyebrow plucking time. We will not be suspects in the Idaho4.
I'm paranoid about bushy eyebrows now, you guys. It's not my fault. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to grow. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, just at the end of the day, you have to think. Well, okay, I'll add a third possibility to that. There is evidence that showcases it's only one weapon, but it's so buried in the 50-something terabytes that Ann Taylor has not had the opportunity to go all the way through, that the judge had to even ask the prosecution, is there anything in here that's of value that they need to absolutely know about? No, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. And I think that's why it is kind of I got into a discussion with Jen. She goes, have you ever heard of an outline before, AR? So, well, of course I've heard of an outline. Who the hell would know of an outline? She goes, well, I don't think Ashley Jennings or Bill Thompson knows what an outline is. I said, what do you mean? She says, all they would have had to do was say what their specific important evidence was, build an outline for it of this is what it is, this is why it is, and then they can go find it in that stack of, evidence that's just unnecessary. And I'm like, all right, stop. You're making too much sense. You're not allowed to say that stuff anymore. Stop.
I mean, you're bringing up the classic thing, well, that I think of as a non-legal person for like a good attorney. The good attorney is the one that knows what the answer is, and that's what they're supposed to, at least before they start talking, and getting the right answer out, knowing what the right questions are to ask. That is, it is really interesting to hear her say that, because it does seem like, just like you, when we try to deliver these stories, we try to have an outline before we hit record. Yeah. So a couple other things I want to bring up when it comes to a second weapon that in AR I have discussed this before, but the number one thing is going to be when we talk about the kitchen. And we don't exactly know if the crime scene went into the kitchen. There's so many questions regarding a lot of things, but we do know that the investigators spent a lot of time in the kitchen. So if they were investigating it as a crime scene, what we know was it was part of the crime scene, but where some of the crime happened, they could have been investigating for blood spatter, but I have before and after pictures from certain dates where they like pulled all of the stuff, including like a butcher's block that had knives in it, off of like the counter and put everything on the table. Like they were clearly moving things. So my thought is they could have either been looking for forensic evidence, testing blood, or they could have been looking to see if there was a missing knife in the kitchen or some sort of like something along those lines. So I want to bring that up too, is the kitchen and the knife, and watching that butcher's block be moved while they were investigating. And I have another point, but I'll toss that to you real quick, because I know you have a lot to say about the kitchen. I've heard a lot of your observations before, particularly with blood spatter, possibly. If you want to talk.
Well, I with the kitchen being the point of entry and potentially the exit point, the way they were tearing that kitchen apart, and from everything that we're seeing, I believe somebody got attacked there. Like that was the initial start point, which I know is just confusing with everything that's been, let out, and, everybody believes is the actual way that it all went down. So many people saying it started upstairs, other people saying it was outdoors. The just in my mind, when I foresee this, I see the kitchen as the entrance, the exit, and the start of the war. And anything at arm's reach can become a weapon. And it can become a weapon in a heartbeat. And it can be used out of desperation, or it can be used as somebody actually knows how to use it. Meaning that if it's a knife, it's probably more usable than if you grab a vase, or if you grab a lamp, or if you grab, some of that nature. It's going to be interesting because, the best way that I could wrap it up, and the other reason why I'm kind of cutting a little short, I 9 o'clock is probably about as long as I can go, Kiki, and then we can kick this again tomorrow. We can leave some little trail for everybody, and that way you and I can stay on the same page and pick it right back up tomorrow with your talking points. But I don't see any possible way in my thinking, and trust me, I've done this. We all have. Everybody in here's done it. We've all visualized through our personal knowledge and experience in life of how we would think something like this could possibly happen. I don't think any of us are ignorant. I don't think that, any of our minds would fail us when we visualize how something like this could potentially happen, because it's based off of, what we know. It's based off of experiences or what we've learned in life. And I'm telling you, just based off of what I'm visualizing, when the perpetrator or perpetrators entered this home into that second floor, it did not begin upstairs. It just didn't. I think it began within feet of that back door. I think somebody, because now it's even potentially the case that the DoorDash was delivered to the back door.
Yep.
Meaning that it would be in the kitchen. It was being eaten in the kitchen or sat down in the kitchen. It didn't come out of the bedroom back to the kitchen. It didn't crawl out there by itself. It didn't fly out to the table. And people would say, well, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? I don't, but I have a gut feeling. I have a gut feeling that somebody was in that area, because that's the entrance. That's the exit. That's there just wouldn't be as like shock to me that he ran into. And I have a gut feeling it's Xana. I have a gut feeling it was Xana right there. And I don't think she made it back to the bedroom. I don't care what people want to release, these law enforcement officers stating that Xana was in the bed. I don't believe that at all. I've told you, Kiki, I think she was in that living room, kind of near that bathroom in the hallway. And I think she crawled to that point. And I think that's why you hear people talking about the whimpering and things of that nature. She was not locked in her bedroom. She wasn't listening to music. She wasn't hanging out with a sleeping boyfriend. She was not in that bedroom when it started. No way. Not possible.
I agree with you 100%. And I think that the original PCA that everyone, wants to say is all misinformation. The one that I think I came to that conclusion at the initial PCA, because and it's backed up in this latest hearing where you hear that that DM saw Dylan on her way downstairs and thought that she was passed out. But when they say in the original PCA that DM opened her door because she heard what she thought was crying. And then she heard after that, and the key thing is after she heard crying, she heard someone say something to the effect of, there's somebody here. Why was she crying? She'd just gotten DoorDash food. She was on TikTok. Her boyfriend was there. Why would Xana be crying? And, just going back to what you're saying, when you said give a teaser to what we were talking about, aside from the fact that you bring up, the crime scene could have been anywhere. And you bring up that she likely had crawled her way back to that position or possibility. Well, Jen Joe, the owner of the company that did the cleanup for the Idaho4, went on the record because the owner of the company had not signed an NDA versus the actual techs who went in there, who were not allowed to use Doco Sketch or any technology when they did the cleanup. And the techs could not sleep for 3 days. They said that it was the worst crime scene they had ever seen. and that, trigger warning, that it was an absolute massacre on the second floor. They fought for their lives. The quote that Jen Joe says, they fought for their fucking lives. That's what this person put in their official Facebook post regarding this, the owner of the company. And we don't say that to be provocative. We say that because we're trying to determine, was there two weapons? And, I just don't know. I don't know. Somebody has said, I've tried to get the question answered. Again, everything I say is a freaking trigger warning here. If a K-bar knife unalived 3 bodies, would it have stayed sharp enough to do so? And I think we asked that in our last live stream, and a couple people who own K-bars I think it is possible. I don't know, but I just don't even know. I don't know if the wounds would change. My point is this: I don't know if the wounds would change from one person to like the third or fourth because of the sharpness of the knife. And I'll stop there because I think I'm just getting really sensitive with the things I'm saying.
No, I agree. And let me, I'm gonna, I'll kind of wrap up what I have to say for tonight. And I don't want people to feel like I'm saying this because I'm some Billy badass type dude, but I sum people up. It comes from my background. I look at people, I sum them up. I look for traits, I look for strengths, I look for weaknesses, I look for things. So as all of you know, or for those that don't know, I was sitting in the courtroom directly behind Brian Kohlberg. I don't know, Twiz could probably I think we were 15 feet-ish, 15 to 20 maybe feet. I'm not He-Man. I'm not a big dude. Like I used to be healthier back in the day than I am now. I used to have more weight, more size. But in looking at Mr. Kohlberger, Brian could not have taken Ethan and Xana on by himself. It's not a chance. Like, I get a knife gives you the upper hand. I get that. And that would be the only potential way, but you would have to figure if everybody's idea that he went upstairs first and then came to take on, you better be able to explain to me without question that Ethan was dead asleep. Because I'm not sure Brian could have taken on Xana. And you guys have to remember, I've seen this man from feet away. He's not a monster. He's not built like a monster. He's a good size person. He's good size. He's bigger than me. I would whoop him in a heartbeat. I would whoop that kid in a heartbeat. And I'm a nothing. So I can only imagine someone with Ethan's size or the grit and tenacity of someone like Xana who's lived a life. He's lived a life. Or she's lived a life. I'm sorry. She's lived a life. I also look at Maddie and Kaylee, and I think I do agree that Maddie was probably asleep. I think she had a good night. She had fun on the town. So I'll give it that she was probably dead asleep. I would probably agree to that. I don't think Kaylee is just a pushover either. I bet she would put some emphasis into a slap or a push or whatever she was doing either. But I don't, that's why you have to be so careful in these conversations, is just because when I'm looking at this man and I'm just saying to myself, there's no intimidation factor here at all. Like, I don't see what people are saying about the intimidation factor in the look in Brian Kohlberger's face. I don't see it in his eyes. I don't see this odd smile. I don't see this crazy maneuvering of the body. I don't see any of that. I don't see any of that. None. And for a guy that's lived my life at my size, because I'm not big, I'm not fast, I wasn't the strongest kid on the block. I didn't grow up in the ghetto, so I didn't have the tenacity as a fighter that many people do. And that kid, literally, I would never feel intimidated by that guy. Not in one sense. There was nothing about him that made me take a double take like, there's something about this kid. There was none of that. Nothing. And I even looked at my wife, and she looked at me and goes, that guy's supposed to be the one that did this? That guy right there? And I'm like, yeah, that's Brian Kohlberg. She goes, that guy. I said, yeah, that guy right there. No. Even my wife like shook her head. Because my wife is a little bit of she's a toughie too. She works hard. You know, I mean, she grew up in a family that they were tile setters. So she went to work as a very young girl with her dad to set tile. And her dad now is approaching like 60-something years old and still laying tile 12 hours a day, working for himself. Loves it. Can't get him to stop. Loves doing it. And the entire family did it. It wasn't about money. It was about they loved doing it. So they all worked very hard in life. And my wife is still the exact same way today. My wife will get down on her hands and knees and lay tile in our house when we need new tile. My wife will do it, not me. Hell no, I won't do it. My wife will do it. When we need a new washer or dryer, my wife will bring it in the house. Not me. My wife will do it. She's that toughie. And when she looks at somebody and shakes her head and goes, that guy? No. And just seeing him mingle. Everybody says like he doesn't get along with women. I watched the bond firsthand with him and Massoff. And I think at the end of the day, I think I do remember Massoff is female. I think I remember that. All 4'2" of them. You know, but I could actually see her over the railing. Yeah. But the back and forth and the smile from Kohlberg. He smiles like a normal person. Nothing odd about it. I didn't see anything weird about it. He smiled at Massoff in the middle of a conversation. Like he was going to give her a high five, I thought, at one moment. I thought they were going to like give each other a high five. Calm, collected, relaxed. I didn't see anything about him that would make me step back and have any feeling of intimidation from him whatsoever.
I mean, I don't think I've ever heard anybody give such a clear statement about his presence in the courtroom. I mean, actually, you know, other than just asking randomly when like Twiz has come back from a hearing or you, I never really heard it. And now that I think about it, after hearing that, I think about like the counter position that you hear in mainstream media, because I mean, how many headlines read with the word like creepy or unsettling or, you know, some fill in the derogatory blank when describing the appearance of Brian Kohlberg. And we found something interesting in my Discord server, which we had a couple people putting like the original photo up versus like the photo they were using in like Newsweek or whatever, you know, fill in the blank mainstream media news source. And it always had like a thick yellow filter on it. It was so obviously being made to look unnatural skin tone, make him look unhealthy. And so when you hear accounts like this, I go back to my viewers. We know you could be anywhere on this Tuesday night, and we're really happy you're here with us. But these are the kinds of things we're trying to bring you for coverage. We're trying to bring you the things that you're not hearing about from the other mainstream medias. And I think we're firmly planting our feet in this case, and people are listening. It is pretty amazing how many people are turning to alternative sources to hear about this case. I mean, I'll bring it up because it is brought up to me every day. One of my favorite podcasters on planet Earth is actually going to be exploring the Brian Kohlberg case. And you all know that follow me that I love Candace Owens, and I had definitely used her as a role model when I first started my podcast and everything, the aesthetic and the way I did my podcasting. And I love her research. And she's been involved in other true crime cases where, she doesn't form an opinion. She stays completely objective, but she does, Candace Owens does not mind turning over the heavy stones. She will look under every stone, and she is very fearless, and she does speak her mind. Doesn't mean she's always right, but she knows how to speak her mind. And it's going to be amazing, because if you guys follow her, for those who do follow her, you've seen what she did with the Justin Baldini case, which is Justin Baldini had came out with all these receipts kind of they haven't gone to trial yet, but he's trying to try this case in the court of public opinion. And he basically leaked all of his receipts. And what Candace Owens did is she went back, she got Justin Baldini, because the PR team for Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds is so massive. It involves Taylor Swift, for God's sakes. And she took Justin Baldini's receipts, formed them into a website, and literally it has helped sway public opinion. So I just want to say it's brilliant that she is going to be taking this, and there are alternative sources, and more viewers are turning to look at these other sources that are willing to just objectively look at something and not completely rule it out. So we get to lucky.
I love Unfiltered. If a million people were watching my every action, they'd definitely be thinking that I was really odd too. And that's exactly it. The crazy thing about it is, if you take 10 people and you have them visually look at one person, all 10 people would have a different opinion of that person, but only 5 of them would be willing to share their real and true opinion, because the other 5 would have to fall in behind somebody, not trying to create drama or havoc. They want to hide behind somebody else's opinion. So if you multiply that to 100, to 1,000, to 1,000,000 people, you're going to have more hidden opinions, more hiders that are unwilling to come out and actually say how they feel, because they feel like they're going to get attacked for it. It's the same thing like me coming out on social media with my past. Do these people not realize that want to attack me in the social media platform? I've already admitted I was a liar. I already admitted I was a cheat. I already admitted I was a scam artist. I already admitted I did all these things. Now you want to continue to call me out for it 5 years later, as if it's all because you had to flow into a genre of people, and the same thing's happening. And I'm glad to hear that you have another person that you watch and you really respect that's going to speak upon things with their own view, their own voice, because that's what's so important. And I think that's why our community is a little different than others. Our actual community that works with each other every single day. We got an amazing community that talks in our chats every time we go live. And it's always such a great conversation, because people are willing to speak with their own voices, their own opinions. Even this Ashley Gullier, and I'm not saying this rudely, it's the first time I've ever bumped into her. It's the first time I've ever seen her in the chat, and I love it. She has come in here with her own view, her own opinion, her own discussion, and she's been a part of this conversation for a very long period of time. And she's been nothing more than pleasant and respectful, even though I've seen a few of the comments. We feel differently on some things, but that's what's so cool about it. That's why this is amazing. And I appreciate so many people being here, because not everybody's going to respect the fact that I sat right behind Brian Kohlberg and I saw it my way. I saw it through my eyes. And I'm using my voice to share with you what I saw. Other people in that courtroom are going to explain it completely different than me, because they saw something different. More power to them. But what you do have to be very careful about, and I've already ran into this, and I see people posting in social media platforms that Brian looked scared, he looked shaky, and they just brought him into courtroom. And I can tell you right now, there's people speaking on the platform that were not in the courtroom. They were not there. And they want to speak as if they were. And these are the voices we have to miss. We can't listen to those that are willing to create that theme that were not actually there to use that theme. You know what I mean? I just got to be careful.
What you're saying actually makes me think of another thing when it comes to just evidence, just along with like influencing people. When we talk about like a reason why maybe, I don't know, I shouldn't even, I feel like I'm going to trail off on another subject and I shouldn't say what I should. Evidence can influence people. So sometimes like when we look at evidence that's out there, when it looks like evidence that should be sealed, we can surmise that it's not going to probably be in court, because when the gag order was in place, what Cy was explaining to us is evidence isn't allowed to circulate because it can influence witnesses. And I'm sorry if I'm trailing off on subjects because it's getting late. I'm probably mincing my words. I want to say I appreciate that you acknowledged Ashley. Ashley, I hadn't seen you in so long. I had seen you. We were in another chat room early over at, I was on Truth and Transparency. I remember when you picked up, I was listening to that. And I saw Ashley in there. I hadn't seen her in a long time. Ashley has helped me on my channel before. She was one of my mods in the past. And so I'm glad to see you back here, Ashley. Thank you for stopping by.
It's great to see you. I mean, and that's the thing about our community. Everybody's welcome as long as we conduct ourselves like adults with respect. I mean, that's all we ask for. We don't ask for you to share the same opinion as us. We don't ask you to agree with the things that we say, that we believe. We just ask you to be here as your individual self, with your opinion and your respectful way of sharing that with us so that we can have a great discussion. We're not experts. I'm sure as hell not an expert. You know, I'm just a little guy that runs my mouth a little too much, but it's fun. It's fun to have these discussions. It's a great crowd. When you get people, you know, like Kiki, myself, you know, the mods that we have, and then you throw in some unfiltered luckies, you get, you know, some of these other creators that come in and, you know, they just throw the middle finger at me while they pass on. But no, I'm kidding. But this is what it's all about. This is why I have such a hard time. Like, I'm torn, and you know, people probably don't fully understand. I think you do, Kiki, because I talk to you more than just about anybody outside of my wife and a few very close people. I don't have a problem walking away from the platform. Like, I don't have a problem walking away from the platform. I have a problem walking away from the people who care. And that's what makes it so hard, because I'm torn. It's like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to just be done. And then people like Kiki start blowing up my phone like, no, we're going live in 30 minutes.
I'm just going to admit it. Like, I was talking to Kane B, the Purge, earlier today, and I said to him, I'm like, I'm just quitting YouTube, you know, but it's ridiculous because every time I say that, there is one thing, you know, other than my friendships and my bonds with AR and my mods and all the other creators that I've come to know over the few years of covering this case and just being on YouTube. It's the viewers. You guys, we love you. We love your energy. I mean, we can feel the energy every time we go live, and we love it. And we know you can be anywhere. We're so grateful that you come here and you want to listen to what we have to say and what our guests have to say and participate in a conversation in the live chat. And yeah, it's always the viewers that bring us back, and we love you very much. And we want to acknowledge every time we can that we are a viewer-driven show. Both of our channels are, and we know that a channel, it's not a person, it's a group of people. And so we're nothing without you. And thank you for motivating us. But yeah, like I said, I told Kane B I was quitting today, and here I am, because I just was excited when AR invited me up to come live. I want to see my audience, and I want to hear what you have to say. So valuable to us.
Absolutely. Real quick, Relentless for Answers, a dear friend of mine battling health. I mean, she is a warrior, surgery after surgery, cancer. She's a survivor. She's battling again. I want to send you all kinds of hugs and love, and I'm sure everybody in the community wants to do the same. Keep battling. I'm always here. Every time you message, I know I don't always get back as quick as I possibly can, but just adore you, and I'm wishing you only the best through everything you're enduring right now, because this woman Kiki has overcome so much, and now she's got another major battle that she's enduring, and I'm just rooting her on, because she is definitely a guideline for exactly what I am facing in front of me, maybe not to the degree of what she's battling, but I have it in my future as well. And she is laying the foundation of how I can make it through. And I see her toughness, and I just really, I'm going to utilize that myself to do my battles too. So definitely appreciate that. And then people are mentioning bringing the pitties during the videos. So maybe tomorrow night, what I'll do if we do this again tomorrow night, Kiki, is I'll set up more in a position where the 3 dogs can join me and interact through the discussion.
Would you please do that? And audience, let's hold AR to it. Let's make him do a live with me tomorrow night. Just tell him how much you love him in the comments, and make sure that he knows, so that because I do want to continue this conversation, and I want to on a serious note just say, you're talking about your guests in the comment section, and your prayer, our thoughts and prayers are with you. And it just makes me think, when you start talking about your struggles, when we talk about our lives and the little things we're going through, showing that we're human, you never know who's listening, AR. You never know who's listening, and your words, they needed to hear, and they needed that little example of strength like you just brought up in the chat. And so it is important that we do show people we're human and what we're going through. I mean, we don't try to hijack the live stream with our personal lives, but it is inspiring, and you just never know who's listening and who needs to hear those words of inspiration. So thank you for being open enough to talk about those things. I don't know if I were going through the same health struggles, I don't know how open I'd be able to talk about them. And it's so greatly appreciated on a large platform. So,
well, thank you. And I do want to let everybody know that we'll probably wrap it up here for tonight, but the amazing Swamp Rose Kiki is going to bring the firepower tomorrow. We have many big discussions still to be had. Trust me, she is the organized leader of the two of us. She brings the goods. She's got the notes. She's got the outlines. So keep your eyes open, your ears peeled, because she's got a lot more to talk about tomorrow. I'm going to let you send us off, but I'm going to say a big thank you to everybody that's here. I love you. And Kiki is going to send us on our way.
All right. Well, thank you again for being here tonight. We know that you could be anywhere else watching any live stream. You could be watching TV. We just appreciate that you're here sharing this moment with us. We can feel your energy. We want to invite you back to watch us tomorrow night. If you're interested, please hit that notification bell. It really does help, because sometimes you don't get the notifications when we go live for all of us. So other than that, I just want to make sure I also express my love to all the viewers. Thank you so much for being here. Even the people who don't comment and you're just watching, we just appreciate your viewership. For my viewers, please go ahead and visit AR's channel if you haven't already, and consider subscribing to him. And if you do leave a comment, please let him know that we sent you over here at the Swamp Rose channel. Lastly, thank you to AR's mods. Thank you to my mods. We have 2 incredibly active chat rooms going right now, both on a Convicts Thoughts channel and the Swamp Rose channel. And we couldn't be more appreciative. You're driving the live stream, and push every time you comment, react, give us new ideas. It pushes that live stream in front of another person. I can't tell you how much we appreciate your comments and reactions, and we feel that energy. With that said, I really hope you guys have a great Tuesday night. And I'm sorry I take so long to say goodbye.
And lastly, before I hit end stream, 2 very important keys to this team. Miss Christy Nevada, one of the great mods for both of our channels. We send you all the love. We have you definitely in our hugs and our prayers with your daughter and the baby. And just keep us posted as we're right here going along with you with that. And then one of my great mods, Mr. James Moen, who is a big fan of everybody within this community, as well as Kiki and the other creators. He's back to work and he's working hard, ladies and gentlemen. So I know he's sleeping in right now because he works as a construction worker within the concrete field. That's not easy work, but he still always finds time to share his love with all of us, and me and Kiki specifically. So thank you to each and every single one of you. We're going to say our good nights. I guess I'll show myself real quick, but you guys have a good night. And I'm even doing
tonight. Why didn't you show yourself the whole damn stream?
I'm cutting in and out. Oh, now I'm not cutting in.
Wait, hold on. Do you have a dollhouse in the background? Just kidding.
You know me. Everybody have a great night. We'll talk again soon.
Bye, everybody.